Welcome back to another episode of Ministry Truth. I'm your only host on this show. I hope you guys are ready for a star-packed episode series stream for today. We do have Tulsi Gabbard and her Senate confirmation hearing. Didn't vote yet. They should be voting before the end of the week, which is today, unless they want to work Saturday and Sunday, which, hey, you guys get paid to do your jobs. Now do your jobs. And I may or may not get into the Kash Patel one, because Kash Patel's was like 4 hours long. But when I'm watching clips of Kash Patel, he was fucking destroying. He was destroying these senators. Kind of like Tulsi. I've caught maybe one or two clips, so it's good to see the whole thing live. Not live. And fulfillness instead of looking at little cap cuts and snippets. Because snippets have no context 9 times out of 10. But before we get into all that, you guys know I like to start off with a little bit of music. Now, those who don't know, if you guys actually, who watches baseball? Who knows about the Savannah Bananas? So the Savannah Bananas are basically like the baseball version of the Globetrotters. You ever never seen a Savannah baseball game? They're on YouTube. Expect it to be really weird and see some crazy shit. Well, that's why I like it. But their season's about to start. They come in here in May. Hopefully the ticket prices drop because they're pretty fucking expensive right now. But doesn't matter. Let's get into the first song, the only song of the day, before we dive into Miss Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard.
This shit that ice cold Michelle fight for that white gold. This one for them hood girls, them good girls, straight masterpieces. Styling, wildin', living it up in the city. Got Chuck's on with Saint Laurent. Gotta kiss myself, I'm so pretty. I'm too hot. Call the police and the fireman. I'm too hot. Make a dragon wanna retire, man. I'm too hot. Say my name, you know who I am. I'm too hot. And my band bought that money. Break it down. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Saturday night and we in the spot. Don't believe me, just watch. Come on. Don't believe me, just watch. Wait a minute. Fill my cup, put some nigga in it. Take a sip, sign the check. Julio, get the stretch. Right to Harlem, Hollywood, Jackson, Mississippi. If we show up, we gon' show out.
Oh, that's the enemy.
I'm too hot. Call the police and the fireman. I'm too hot. Make a dragon wanna retire, man. I'm too hot. Trick say my name, you know who I am. I'm too hot. And my band bought that money. Break it down. Girls hit you, hallelujah.
Hey!
Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Saturday night we in the spot. Don't believe me, just watch. Come on.
Friday, we gotta get pumped the fuck up. And Uptown, we're gonna pump you up. Hello. Hello, Zippity. Now that how do I say this? Energizing song that came on. Whoa, that's pretty cool. Look at the rays that are like right here. There we go. How do I get the angle wrong? Probably because I'm going the wrong way. There it is. See the rays right above my hand? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, like I said, today we're going to go into the Tulsi confirmation hearing. When I was looking at it, the whole stream, let me go back into it. And I'm going to tell you right now, I skipped a lot of the beginning portions of the opening remarks because they were just fucking stupid and they drug on and I was fucking dying trying to watch this. So I pulled it straight up to Senator Cotton before, the beginning of the actual hearing. So that's where we're at. If you want to go back and check the entire video, it's not that hard. but I'll be nice enough to put it in the comments for you or the chat. Hold on, let me put these on all of them. Not that, it matters. But, if people want to go check the, holy fuck. Oh, X is the only one that didn't show up. God damn it. All right. So let's get into this. We're talking to Tom Cotton. I believe he is the president of this committee right now, or acting. So
I know that Senator Ernst has a busy schedule to include a hearing for Dan Driscoll, the Secretary of Army nominee at the Armed Services Committee. I'm sure Senator Burr has to go on a fishing trip or something. So we will excuse both senators from the witness table.
the second one's retired. What up, Junie?
Relationships matter.
What the fuck just happened?
I urge my colleagues to support this nomination.
Thank you, Senator Ernst. Dan Driscoll, the Secretary, has to go on a... Ms. Gabbard, before we move to your opening statement, it is the custom of the committee to ask a series of obligatory questions to all nominees. First, do you swear or affirm to give this committee your full and truthful testimony?
I do.
Second, do you agree to appear before the committee here
he's a
or in other
baddie right
venues
here.
when invited?
Yes.
Third, if confirmed, do you agree to send officials from your office to appear before the committee
Hello,
and designated
Donna.
staff when invited?
Yes.
Fourth, do you agree to provide documents or any materials requested by the committee
Sha la 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 la. I know it's sha na 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 na.
in order for it to carry out its oversight and legislative
I
responsibilities?
do.
Fifth, will you ensure that your office and your staff provide such material to the committee when requested?
Yes.
Sixth, do you agree to inform and fully brief, to the fullest extent
Bro,
possible,
she's stoic as
all
fuck.
members of this committee on intelligence activities and
Wait, Cotton's from Arkansas? Who's the one from Missouri?
covert actions rather
thought
than
Cotton
only
was
the
from
chairman
Missouri.
and the vice chairman?
Yes.
Thank you for those answers, Ms. Gabbard. We now welcome the opportunity, finally, to hear from you in your own words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I too would like to start by offering my prayers and condolences to those who were killed in last night's horrific crash. Senator Warner, Senator Moran, our condolences and prayers are with you and all of your constituents. Again, Chairman Cotton and Vice Chairman Warner and all of the members of the committee, it's an honor to be here before you today. I've appreciated the opportunity to meet with so many of you and address your questions and concerns before today's hearing. I know they've gone, but I'm grateful to Senators Burr and Ernst for their trust and their confidence in taking time to join us here today.
Oh, it's
My
Holly.
husband
My
Abraham,
bad.
my family, friends, fellow veterans, Medal of Honor recipients, and patriots, thank you for your love and support. I'm honored and grateful to President Trump for his trust and confidence in nominating me to serve our country as the Director of National Intelligence at a time when trust in the intelligence community, unfortunately, is at an all-time low. Chuck Schumer admitted a few years ago, quote, "You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from
Bro,
Sunday
look at
of
her
getting back
Secret
at
Service, dude. They're fucking jacked.
For too long, faulty, inadequate, or weaponized intelligence have led to costly failures and the undermining of our national security and God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. The most obvious example of one of these failures is our invasion of Iraq based upon a total fabrication or complete failure of intelligence. This disastrous decision led to the deaths of tens of thousands of American soldiers, millions of people in the Middle East, mass migration, destabilization, and undermining of the security and stability of our European allies, the rise of ISIS, strengthening of Al-Qaeda and other Islamist jihadist groups, and strengthening Iran. Here are just a few other examples. The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice, and yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation, specifically to help Biden win the election.
No
Former
way.
DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John
Still
Brennan's
doing it.
leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end. President Trump's reelection is a clear mandate from the American people to break this cycle of failure, end the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community, and begin to restore trust in those who've been charged with the critical task of securing our nation. If confirmed as DNI, I will do my very best to fulfill this mandate and bring leadership to the intelligence community with a laser-like focus on our essential mission: ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. As the President's principal intelligence advisor, I'll begin by leading by example, checking my own personal views at the door, and committing to delivering intelligence that is collected, analyzed, and reported without bias, prejudice, or political influence. I enlisted in the Army because of the horrific terrorist attack on September 11th. And volunteered to deploy to Iraq in 2005, where I served in a medical unit. After nearly 22 years in uniform with 3 combat deployments to the Middle East and Africa, I'm now a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, where I serve as a battalion commander of soldiers in Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas. I served in Congress for 8 years on the Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs, and Armed Services committees. And it's my experience in the military and in the halls of Congress that have given me a deep understanding of the complex challenges that our nation faces, in both roles engaging with world leaders, in both roles being privy to highly classified intelligence. So I know firsthand how essential accurate, unbiased, and timely intelligence is to the President, to Congress, and to our warfighters. I also know the heavy cost of intelligence failures and abuses. Senator Collins, you led the creation of ODNI specifically to address those intelligence failures of 9/11 and Iraq's so-called WMDs. The need for the ODNI under strong leadership still exists today. If confirmed, I'll bring my experience and fresh eyes to leading the intelligence community. And my day one priorities will be to assess the global threat environment, identify where gaps in our intelligence exist, integrate intelligence elements, increase information sharing, and ensure that unbiased, apolitical, objective collection and analysis to support the President and policymakers' decision-making occur. I'll work to end the politicization of the intelligence community and ensure there is a clear mission focus in the IC on its core mission of this unbiased, apolitical collection and analysis of intelligence to secure our nation. I'll work to rebuild trust through transparency and accountability. This is a national security imperative. And I'll work to assess and address efficiencies, redundancies, and effectiveness across ODNI to ensure focus of personnel and resources is on our core mission of national security.
What's on your head, loser?
In my meetings that I've had with many of you, you expressed bipartisan frustration about recent intelligence failures as well as the lack of responsiveness to your requests for information. Whether it's the surprise October 7th Hamas terrorist attack, to the sudden takeover of Syria by Islamist extremists, failures to identify the source of COVID, anomalous health incidents, UAPs, drones, and more. If confirmed, I
You
look
guys hear
forward to
that those drones were authorized The whole thing was authorized according to, oh my god, I can't remember her fucking name. Not Bondi. The press secretary, whose name I can't fucking remember right now.
Working with you to address these issues. Ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people is a mandate of leadership that rises above partisan politics. If confirmed, my commitment to the President, to you, and to the American people is this: I will do my very best to find the truth, no matter where it leads, and share that truth with President Trump, his advisors, and you in Congress, providing you with that unbiased, timely, and accurate intelligence as you make the tough decisions that'll impact the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. Now, before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty
Hey,
to.
if you pay attention to this background art that's been there since fucking forever, there's a swastika. There's another swastika. Trying to say the halls of Congress are all white supremacy? That's what the wall implies, right?
And my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States, accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet.
Yeah.
I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator. I just hate al-Qaeda. I hate that we have leaders who cozy up to Islamist extremists, minimizing them to so-called rebels. As Jake Sullivan said to Hillary Clinton, quote, al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Well, Syria is now controlled by an al-Qaeda offshoot.
Yeah.
HTS, led by an Islamist jihadist who danced in the streets on 9/11 and who was responsible for the killing of many American service members. Democrat senators in the past resorted to anti-Christian bigotry against some of President Trump's judicial nominees like Amy Coney Barrett and Brian Boucher. I condemn those actions as
Any
a
relation,
Democrat in
Bobby?
Congress at the time, as religious bigotry must be thoroughly condemned by all of us, no matter the religion. Unfortunately, there are some Democrat senators who still don't understand the principle of freedom of religion and Article 6 of the Constitution. Quote, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Unfortunately, they're once again using the religious bigotry card, but this time trying to foment religious bigotry against Hindus and Hinduism. If anyone is sincerely interested in knowing more about my own personal spiritual path of Hinduism, I welcome you to go to my account on X, where I'll share more on this topic. If confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will continue to live by the oath that I have sworn at least 8 times in my life, both in uniform and as a member of Congress.
I think I did it 5
I will
times.
support and defend our God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gabbard. A few reminders before we begin our 5-minute round of questioning. First, a reminder to the audience, once again, I will not tolerate disruptions or disturbances either in favor of or in opposition to Ms. Gabbard. We all came to hear from Ms. Gabbard, not from you. 2 reminders to my colleagues. We'll have a 5-minute round of questions. Not 5.5, not 6, 5-minute round. We will also have a closed session after this hearing in which you'll have another 5-minute opportunity to ask questions. Second, if any question, as Senator Risch alluded to, begins to approach the line of classified material, my crack staff will advise me, and I'll
Your
ask you
mods
to
are
hold the
slacking, bro.
question until we get to a closed setting.
Mr. Chairman, could I just inquire? I was under the understanding that if in the open round, because this is the only time the American people will be able to see this judgment, you'd agreed if certain members needed to ask a second round of questions.
This dude
in a
right
public
here
setting,
talked
would
about
do
him
that.
the other day.
As is our custom, if a member waits until the end of the opening round and has a follow-up question, then we will permit that follow-up question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Gabbard, if confirmed, you'll be entrusted with our nation's most important secrets. We're all entrusted with that information to serve the American people and to keep our country safe. Unfortunately, as you said in your opening statement, we've seen too many instances in recent years of people who were trusted with classified information and went on to abuse and politicize that trust. For example, in October 2020, more than 50 former intelligence officers, many of whom still held a top secret clearance, wrote a letter invoking their credentials to make false claims
Not yet, Junie.
about Hunter Biden's laptop, likely being Russian disinformation. Do you agree that this was an example of intelligence professionals abusing and politicizing their past positions and credentials?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do, and it is an example of what needs to end and why the American people elected President Trump to bring about those necessary reforms.
Thank you.
You're right.
Will you
You're right.
commit
I
that
totally
no one
forgot
who
that.
abuses his past position and credentials in this fashion will hold a security clearance in the future?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I want to be fair to my Democratic colleagues. Such abuses aren't just a problem on the left. Also in 2020, President Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, published a book in which he revealed sensitive conversations with the president on national security matters, including highly classified information.
It's okay
He
because
didn't
it was a
submit this
book by
for
John
review
Bolton.
and approval to ensure that our national security secrets were protected. Do you agree that John Bolton's actions likewise undermined public trust?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Will you commit that no one
Listen, they're going to attack one specific person, Mr. Snowden. Yeah, he put the secrets out. But it also opened up the worms that, like, hey, there's massive corruption, and here it is. They didn't like that. And he did not go to Russia to disappear. He went to Russia on a layover, right? And the U.S. canceled his passport, so he couldn't leave. They don't tell you that part.
who so abuses his past position and risks the exposure of classified information by publishing a book without submitting it for review and getting approval before publication will hold a security clearance again or be trusted with classified information again?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's move on to the topic of OD&I reform that I mentioned in my opening statement. Congress originally envisioned the OD&I to be a small coordinating agency that directs, rather than replicates, the now 18 constituent agencies that make up our intelligence community. Over the years, however, the OD&I has strayed from this vision to an organization that now publicly boasts nearly 2,000 people, more than half of whom are not detailed from an intelligence agency, but rather are career OD&I bureaucrats. They've even developed centers that are producing their own analysis. Will you commit today to working with this committee to restoring the OD&I to its original size, scope, and function?
Yes, Senator, I look forward to working with you and the committee as I, if confirmed, assess the current status of who is working in the OD&I and the function that they fulfill to make sure of its effectiveness and elimination of redundancies and bloating.
Thank you. Do you support some of the policy proposals I mentioned in my opening statement about capping the size of the OD&I, eliminating OD&I taxes, returning employees back to their home agencies to do real intelligence work?
Yes, Senator, I look forward to working with you as we assess where the OD&I needs to be in order to fulfill its core mission and function.
Thank you. And in your preparation for this hearing and this important responsibility, have you developed any thoughts that explains the mission creep and the empire building that we've seen at the OD&I in recent years?
Yes, Senator, I've had the opportunity to review the history of the OD&I, to speak to Ambassador
Wonder who the
Negroponte,
guy
the
in the
first
way
Director of National Intelligence, as well as others who have served in this position. I think there are a number of contributing factors to the creation of centers, or not centers, but offices like the recently eliminated Office of DEI within OD&I, and other areas where I need to go in and assess the replication and the duplication of responsibilities that exist elsewhere and some of the other intelligence elements that ODNI has oversight over.
Thank you. Colleagues, I will lead by example and yield back 1 minute of my time and recognize the Vice Chair.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is a first.
Shut the fuck up, faggot.
And Ms. Gabbard, let me be clear, at least in my views. I salute your service to our country. But I have serious doubts about your judgment. And those are some of the areas that I want to pursue. First, until you are nominated by the president to be the DNI, you consistently praise the actions of Edward Snowden. Some who, I believe,
My
jeopardized the security of our nation, and then, in an effort to flaunt that, fled to Russia.
Not true.
You even called Edward Snowden, and I quote here, a brave whistleblower. Every member of this committee supports the rights of legal whistleblowers. But Edward Snowden isn't a whistleblower. And in this case, I'm a lot closer to the chairman's words, where he said Snowden is, quote, an egotistical, serial liar and traitor who, quote, deserves to rot in jail for the rest of his life.
He just pretty much said every politician in history.
Gabbard, a simple yes or no question. Do you still think Edward Snowden is brave?
Yes.
Mr. Vice Chairman, Edward Snowden broke the law. I do not agree with or support with all of the information and intelligence that he released, nor the way in which he did it. There would have been
think that's
opportunities for
Rosemary.
him to come to you on this committee or seek out the IG to release that information. The fact is, he also, even as he broke the law, released information that exposed egregious, illegal, and unconstitutional programs that are happening within our government
Excuse me, Mr.
that
Gabbard.
led to serious reforms that Congress undertook.
Chairman, we got 5 minutes. So I take your answer, and these are your quotes. Brave, please join my bipartisan legislation calling for charges to be dropped against him. Do you disagree that legislation was not appropriate? Do you believe
I got
he's brave
Jennifer
or
in a
not?
bag. I got
What-
Jennifer White
Back those-
Sage and
those words?
Once again,
Lavender
Senator,
Sage.
Edward Snowden broke the law. He
Ms. Gabbard,
also
I'm not
released
talking- we
information
agree that Edward Snowden
that
broke the
exposed
law.
the United States
Asking you a
government's
question whether
illegal
your
programs.
legislation and your words are still your beliefs. Yes or no, please?
She exposed
I'm
government.
making myself very clear.
She is.
Edward
Ma'am.
Snowden broke the law. He released information
right.
about the United
All right,
States
ma'am, I've
government's
got other issues
illegal
to raise.
activities.
Ma'am, I
If I may just finish my thoughts, Senator.
Get him.
In this role that I've been nominated for, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will be responsible for protecting our nation's secrets. And I have four immediate steps
ask for
that I
additional
would
time,
take to
Chairman.
prevent another Snowden-like leak.
I want
Ma'am,
them like
I
Palo
would
Alto,
simply
so
ask you
or
again.
Palo Santo, so I can't burn it.
I don't think you're going to answer. I agree with Tom Cotton. He's a traitor. You, for years, until you got chosen by President Trump, have celebrated this guy as
I still
brave.
do. And McAfee.
You've called for him to be pardoned, for his charges to be dropped. I cannot imagine a director of national intelligence that would say that kind of behavior is okay.
Under a
How would
whistleblower, yeah.
we maintain the trust of the IC and the contractors who work for it? How would we maintain the trust of our Five Eye partners? I find it very troubling. Let me move to 702. I know
No,
other
I
members
like
are gonna
it. She
raise this.
doesn't.
Remember, the 702 is critical to our national security. 60% of the president's daily brief, 60% of the information President Trump gets every day in a PDB will come from this. You've had a long history of opposing 702.
Oh, this is the motherfucker that
Many members of
shakes.
Congress have. But one of the things you actually done that not many have is not to reform it, but you actually said you wanted to repeal it. But now, whether it's, confirmation conversion or whatever, you call 702 vital. And I'm quoting, because of significant FISA reforms have been enacted since you left Congress. Ms. Gabbard, what are the reforms
No!
that have
Get
led
the
you
fuck
to
outta
now
here,
support
stupid.
702?
In the short time that I have, Senator, I will just note that my actions in legislation in Congress were done to draw attention to the egregious civil liberties violations that were occurring at that time.
Ms. Gabbard, you
Some
said,
of
Ms.
the-
Gabbard, I ask you a question. Please give me the courtesy of responding. You said the reforms now make you support it. What, can you cite which reforms?
There are a number of reforms to include
In the new
getting
bill,
rid.
in the new law,
that,
right?
That all
right.
of you and your
Gabbard,
wisdom.
Ms. Gabbard, my time is getting short. But I got to just tell you, after the reforms were passed into law in April of 24, you went on Joe Rogan's podcast in
Okay.
May. The bill is now law. And you said, quote,
I'm not sure.
this bill took an already bad problem.
I know I just bought some eucalyptus. My kid's gonna go pick it up later today, but yeah, I got a eucalyptus. Fuck, dude, I bought like a whole bunch of them. If I want, being honest, what did I buy today? Since yeah, I got nothing better to do. What did I buy today? I bought spring sanuta and eucalyptus with white sage, a black sage, lavender and white sage, eucalyptus, blue sage, and rosemary. They didn't have the cedar, which, dude, I'm gonna tell you, that fucking cedar smudge, bro, I'm pissed I ran out of it. That's why I started burning the rosemary.
And made it many, many times worse. Again, in my mind, this is a question of judgment. 702 is critical. I appreciate this late conversion, but I'm not sure I buy it because you've had such a consistent position. Again, I know my colleague's going to raise these, but rather than standing up to dictators like Putin and Assad, you've sometimes amplified his talking points. I mean, I just do not understand how you can blame NATO for Putin's brutal invasion.
Oh shit, we're all in the group here. I used to love
And
working
when Assad
with
used
cedar,
chemical weapons
building stuff.
against his own people.
Matter of fact, I have a cabinet in the bathroom that I built completely from cedar. And my TV stand downstairs, the whole base of it's cedar.
You didn't condemn him, and I can go through all the quotes. You actually questioned Americans' intelligence. Now, you mentioned a lot about trust. And one of the things that I'm so proud on this committee is, my friend Senator Burr said, we always follow the truth. I say on this committee, it's the most valuable work I do in the Senate. We have a bipartisan approach to intelligence. I think we have worked to try to keep the intelligence community and earn their trust, and frankly, earn the trust of the American people.
Which they haven't.
But I, respectfully, ma'am, I just don't believe on your judgment and credibility issues that this is the appropriate role that you should take going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
when she was a Democratic darling in the Senate, they loved her. She was like the next big thing until she came out against not Pelosi. Maybe it was Pelosi and Kamala in the debates. She smashed them in the Democratic debates. And nobody looked at her after. They're like, oh, this bitch. Been following Tulsi for a while. She smashed those motherfuckers. And then that's why they don't like her.
Gabbard, Edward Snowden does stand out as having done particularly grave harm to our national security by revealing top secret information, including sensitive sources and methods, thus jeopardizing agents in the field. So let me ask you a question. If confirmed, would you support or recommend a pardon or any kind of clemency for Edward?
What does being the director of the National Intelligence Committee have to do with Edward Snowden? Is that the only thing they're going to focus on is Edward Snowden? Then they're not asking the real questions. They're trying to get gotchas.
Edward Snowden.
Thank you for the question, Senator Collins. If confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, my responsibility would be to ensure the security of our nation's secrets and would not take actions to advocate for any actions related to Snowden.
So the answer is no. Is that
Correct.
correct? In 2020, you introduced the Protect Brave Whistleblowers Act, which would amend the Espionage Act to make it more difficult to prosecute individuals who reveal classified information. In particular, the bill would allow individuals to disclose even top secret information as long as it's not done with the specific intent to injure the United States or advantage any foreign nation. Your bill would also have created an affirmative defense if public disclosure of classified information were made for several reasons, one of which was to expose gross waste of funds. I strongly oppose this legislation, which would hamper our ability to prosecute people who give our adversaries classified information. So let me ask you this, Ms. Gabbard, do you still support providing individuals who have access to top secret information with the ability to make their own decisions regarding whether that information should be publicly disclosed, even though disclosure may cause tremendous harm to our country or our allies?
Senator, we cannot and should not have individual vigilantes within the intelligence community making their own decisions about how and where and when to expose our nation's secrets. The intent of the legislation that you have pointed out was pointed towards ensuring due process for those who are charged under the Espionage Act in a court of law. This is a law that has been abused in some cases and used for political purposes. President Obama charged more people under the Espionage Act than all other presidents combined. If confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, my sole focus and goal would be our nation's security, which includes ensuring the security of our nation's secrets. And I would work to make sure that we don't have any disclosures or vigilantes taking it upon themselves. There are numerous legal paths that will protect this information for those who feel they have concerns. And I look forward to working with you and this committee on making sure that those protections are known by every single person in the workforce and effectively implemented.
So
Fucking
you
dogs
do
wrap me
not
up.
support allowing individuals to make their own decisions without authorization to disclose secret information, classified information?
Yes, and I believe we have the legal structure in place for those who have concerns to address them.
As you know, there has been speculation in the press that you met with Hezbollah, a terrorist organization affiliated with Iran. Have you ever knowingly met with any?
You do know President Trump met with the leaders of the Taliban in the U.S. And that's how we had that perfect withdrawal plan set in place until Biden fucked it up.
Members, leaders, or affiliates of Hezbollah?
No, and it is an absurd accusation.
Yet everybody's in pocket with Israel, in the pockets of Israel, one of the, if not the biggest terrorist organization in the world.
Let me ask you one final question in the short time we have left. With Hamas, ISIS-K, the Houthis,
ISIS
all
K
the
still around?
Iranian proxies in Syria and Iraq, Yemen, and Al-Qaeda, all posing general resurgences in the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia. I'm alarmed at the lack of focus by the IC on this threat to our safety. We don't want to have to call you back to this room after a terrorist attack and ask, how did the IC miss this? Great power competition, China, Russia, definitely pose threats to our country, but the terrorist threat is arguably the most imminent threat.
Yeah, I don't like she's specifically saying this right here because it makes you wonder. Maybe. Oh, and that's another theory I had on that helicopter crash yesterday. Hmm.
According to former FBI Director Chris Wray. If confirmed, what would be your strategy to refocus the IC on the terrorist threat to our country and to Americans abroad?
Thank you, Senator. I agree with your assessment, and this speaks to the need for the ODNI to exist, to redirect those resources, identifying the gaps in intelligence so that we are able to get ahead of these threats instead of coming around after the fact and trying to assess why did we not know about this sooner so that we could have taken action to prevent it.
Thank you.
Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Ms. Gabbard.
Thank you.
I am going to try to get 4 questions in, so I'll be brief, and if you can reciprocate, that
Who
would
is
be
this?
very
Gillibrand?
much appreciated. We've been talking
Oh,
about Section
this
702,
guy.
the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and I believe it's critical that the DNI support additional reforms to protect the privacy of law-abiding Americans. In your written response to committee questions, you wrote, and I quote, "Warrants should generally be required before an agency undertakes a U.S. person query of Section 702."
Correct.
Is this your current position?
Yes, it is, Senator. And as you'll note in that written response, I noted some exigent circumstances with
agree with
which
that.
there may be other options. But I also want to make a note that a simple warrant requirement is ultimately going to be a policy decision that all of you will make. I would point to history, to some examples.
Time is short. I'm glad you answered in line with your written answer that you support a warrant. Section 702 also involves a huge loophole now that was included recently that could allow the government to force anyone with access to a Wi-Fi router or cable box to secretly participate in the warrantless surveillance program. Do you support, as I do, eliminating this language?
Senator, I would have to
Okay. If this motherfucker voted for the omnibus, either one of them during Biden's administration, if he voted for that, he was voting for more money for the FISA courts. They want you to be spied on. Now he's up here full of shit. FISA was just another thing from the Patriot Act. And you guys kept the Patriot Act alive until 2016, 2018. You didn't get rid of that. Had to be an executive order.
look more into that and assess, if confirmed, what the impacts of the implementation of the existing safeguards are and come back to you and Congress as you look at reauthorization.
It is a massive loophole, and I hope to hear after you've looked at it that you'll be supportive of my efforts. Let me turn now to the question of the Inspector General situation. Can the President of the United States refuse to fund the Inspector General for the intelligence community despite appropriations from Congress? And here I'd like a yes or no.
Yes.
Senator, I don't know about the legal authorities, but I understand the essential role that the inspectors general play. And if confirmed, look forward to empowering our Inspector General to fulfill their responsibility.
Good, because Congress either has the power of the purse or it doesn't. And I think in your answer to me, you recognize that you have an
So you're talking about IGs. When these people fail audits, like the Department of Defense for the past 7 years at least, what are the IGs actually investigating? They're not investigating fraud, waste, and abuse. That's quite obvious. So what are they really investigating?
Independent obligation to follow the law. I think that's a constructive answer. Let me turn now to the matter of spying on journalists. You wrote in your response to the committee questions that you support the Biden administration Department of Justice's policy restricting the collection of reporters' records, and you called for the codification of those restrictions. Will you reconfirm that position this morning?
I believe strongly in the First Amendment,
Yep.
which protects a free press.
So you will, in effect, say that
Yes,
you
you
will continue
stupid
to
fuck.
support the Biden administration policy to protect journalists.
Oh,
I'm not familiar.
you see what he did there? The Biden administration policy. He threw in that Biden so that she would say, "Oh yeah, I totally agree with Biden's fucking policy." She said she agreed with the First Amendment.
Here with the specific Biden administration policy, but I believe strongly in the defense of the First Amendment.
It is a policy that restricts the collection of reporters' records, and you have called for the codification of those records.
Like the Ashley
So
Biden diary.
I'm going to accept that you're not changing your position, and I appreciate it. I got time, I think, for one more question. While you were in Congress, you introduced legislation prohibiting the government from mandating that Americans' phones or apps include mechanisms to allow the government to bypass encryption or other privacy technology. In your written responses to the committee questions, you reconfirmed your opposition to these mandates. Is that still your position?
Yes, these back doors lead
Yeah.
down a dangerous path that can undermine Americans' Fourth Amendment rights and civil liberties.
You are being very helpful by moving so quickly.
So she's doing her job, and this dude's not happy with the answers. She swore an oath. She said at least 8 times to the Constitution of the United States to support and defend it. And you're trying to say, well, this Biden's policy. No, dude. It's been a policy since, what, 1776, 1775, which is when the Army was born. We didn't become a country till 1776. Fun fact.
Let me turn to whistleblowers. You wrote in your response that whistleblowers must have clear, protected channels to report concerns, including the unauthorized transmittal of classified information to appropriate entities such as members of Congress. Do you agree that IC whistleblowers must have a clear path to this committee and that they don't need permission from agencies to talk to us? That's a yes or no.
Senator, the answer is clearly yes. I would like to state a few other actions I would take if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence is, number one, make sure that we don't have illegal and unconstitutional programs within the intelligence community, making sure that we enact security clearance reform to limit access to our nation's top secrets, make sure that every single person in the workforce understands their rights as whistleblowers and the legal channels to take, which would include coming directly to you as members of Congress, as well as establishing a direct hotline to myself should they choose to take that path.
One last question, if I might. Would you support the declassification of the committee's full report on the CIA's torture program?
Senator, I believe in transparency. I have not seen this, and so cannot make an honest assessment for that answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cornyn.
Welcome, Ms. Gabbard. Congratulations and thank you for your service to our nation. I hope you will take to heart the chairman's comments about the exploding bureaucracy, not only in the government generally, but in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. This is a critical role to be played, but unfortunately that role is not made easier or more effective by such a large, unwieldy bureaucracy. Do you believe that the President of the United States should get all of the lawfully collected intelligence that's available in order to inform his judgments as Commander-in-Chief?
Senator, not only is the answer a strong yes, I would say that it is the Director of National Intelligence responsibility to make sure that the President has access to all the intelligence so that he can make the best informed decisions for our country.
And you will be the one actually briefing him on a daily basis, correct?
That's correct.
And the President's daily brief, and we've heard that that is composed of about 60% of it's composed of information gleaned by collection under Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. I've heard your comments to Senator Wyden and others. You and I talked about the importance of getting dissenting views in front of the president so that we don't have groupthink, which can be very dangerous, particularly in the intelligence collection areas. And I appreciate your agreeing that presenting the policymakers, including the president, with dissenting views is very important. Are you aware that overwhelmingly the courts that have looked at a challenge to Section 702 based on the Fourth Amendment and any potential warrant requirement have overwhelmingly said that the Fourth Amendment is not implicated by search of lawfully collected intelligence?
I am aware, yes, Senator.
And do you disagree with that?
Yeah.
What I began to say in answer to Senator Wyden's previous question on this issue is, number one, the decision about a warrant requirement will be yours to make, not mine as the Director of National Intelligence.
You'll be the Director of National Intelligence, and people will be wanting to hear from you about
Well,
what
pass the fucking
we
law
should do as
so she can
policymakers.
enforce it.
Admittedly, you're not going to be a policymaker, but you certainly will inform us.
Pass the law, because that's your job, so she can enforce it. That's how it's done. You can't tell her to do something that's not, in the SOP or within the law limits. So she's right. That's your job.
And wouldn't you do agree that the courts have overwhelmingly held that a warrant is not required, correct?
Yes, Senator, I'm aware of the court rulings. What my commitment is to make sure that we uphold the Fourth Amendment rights of Americans in protecting against unlawful seizure and search. There are many different ways to do this. The devil is in the details.
Yeah.
There are examples of how even in situations under Title I where a warrant is required to surveil a U.S. person.
Title I is different. I agree.
Correct.
I agree with you on that.
But my point, Senator, if I may just finish.
Excuse me. If that was misused in the case of Carter Page,
Which
and
dog?
basically an FBI lawyer lied
Right.
in order to secure that warrant.
Which is why there are safe.
What would be necessary to be shown in order to establish probable cause to a judge in order to obtain a warrant?
Again, Senator, that's
that the
not for me
Justice
to say.
Department?
That would be for you all to decide and for the Attorney General to weigh in on.
Do you know what the elements of probable cause are and whether that's a practical and workable solution?
This is the center of the debate, the high standard of probable cause that's required to get a warrant, and why this will continue to be a conversation, again, with the Attorney General weighing in and all of you in Congress making this policy decision.
The CIA director, John Ratcliffe, said during his testimony before this committee that he believed that a warrant is not only required by law, but is actually impractical. Do you disagree with that or agree with that?
What's up,
I
clown?
will be in a better position to make an assessment on the practical implications of this if confirmed as DNI. My commitment remains to uphold the Constitution and Americans' Fourth Amendment rights.
Where would the warrant be sought? Would it be in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or would it be in some other Article III court?
My understanding is that it would be in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court.
Are you aware of the fact the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court has held that a warrant is not required?
I am aware.
So, funny story.
Thank you.
When these foreign intelligence committees, typically they don't monitor traffic coming into the country when it comes to all this stuff. They monitor it when it comes from this country. So definitely they're spying on us. We know this. Everything. This computer, this stream, this phone. Are you real? I don't know if this cat's real. I can't tell. It's not answering me. It just keeps blinking.
Thank you. Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome. You traveled to Syria and Lebanon in January 2017. Bassam Kawam personally paid for that trip, and Bassam and his brother Ilyas accompanied you to both Lebanon and Syria.
You know,
The
we
Quam
did
brothers
have
have
troops
links
in
to the
Syria.
Syrian Social Nationalist Party, an ally of Hezbollah. And in fact, in 2008, the Syrian Social Nationalist Party participated in the assassination of a former Lebanese prime minister and assisted Hezbollah in Beirut. When did you become aware of the links between the Quam brothers and the Syrian Social Nationalist Party?
Senator, thank you for your question. Just a point of clarification. I paid for my own expenses and travel on that trip. I was not aware of any accusations of these two Lebanese Americans associations until after the trip occurred.
And that's when you reimbursed?
Correct.
Because
Correct.
'Cause originally-
Not because of, I wanted to make sure that there were no perceived conflicts of interest. I addressed this specific question to these Lebanese Americans who had organized the trip, and they vehemently denied
You know,
any
honestly,
associations.
I'm asking her all these questions. You know, she's been through a complete background check 5 times recently, and all came back good to go. And that's a pretty fucking strict background check for the clearances.
With that group.
There is not a great deal in the public record about what you and Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad discussed for so long in January of 2017. And I think there's a great deal of interest from the American people about what was discussed in that meeting. So what did you talk about? And did you press Assad on things like his use of chemical weapons, systematic torture, and the killing of so many Syrians?
Yes, Senator. Upon returning from this trip, I met with people like then Leader Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, talked to them and answered their questions about the trip. And quite frankly, I was surprised that there was no one from the intelligence community or the State Department who reached out or showed any interest whatsoever in my takeaways from that trip. I would have been very happy to have a conversation and give them a back brief. I went with former Congressman Dennis Kucinich, who had been there many times before and who had met with Assad before. A number of topics were covered and discussed, and to directly answer your question, yes, I asked him tough questions about his own regime's actions, the use of chemical weapons and the brutal tactics that were being used against his own people.
Were you able to extract any concessions from President Assad?
No, and I didn't expect to, but I felt these issues were important to
Or
address.
she attempted.
According to your revised trip report, your third meeting in Syria after meeting with Assad and then his wife was with Grand Mufti Ahmad Badreddin Hassoun. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. In an October 2011 speech, the Grand Mufti warned the U.S. and Europe that we will prepare suicide bombers who are already in your countries if you bomb Syria or Lebanon. What was the goal, or what did you accomplish by meeting with Grand Mufti?
Yes, Senator, before going on the trip and during my time both in Syria and Lebanon, I made it a point to meet with different religious leaders, both Muslim leaders as well as various Christian and Catholic leaders who were there in the region. I did that both in Syria and in Lebanon to hear from them about what their concerns or thoughts were with regard to the war that was being waged at the time.
Were you aware of his threats regarding suicide bombers in the United States?
Wait a second. So you mean to tell me members of Congress, they didn't do this? Like, it's literally their job, right? To go over there and do your job and see, well, hey, how can we prevent this? Why are they doing this? Let's talk to the local people. That's like the same reason you guys don't want to talk to Russia. You refuse to go talk to Russia. And that's why the whole Ukraine thing is. It could have ended shortly after it started. But no. NATO and the United States stepped in and told Vladimir Zelensky, hey, that's a bad treaty. Don't sign it. Tear it up. And then what we have now.
Was not and had not heard that until today.
Who vetted the people that you met with on this trip to Syria and Lebanon?
The itinerary was created by former Congressman Dennis Kucinich, his constituents who he had traveled with to Syria and Lebanon a number of times before. Some of the individuals that I met with were looked at prior to the trip. Others came up during the trip that were unexpected.
Just in complete hindsight, would you view this trip as good judgment?
Yes, Senator.
Yeah.
And I believe that leaders, whether you
Diplomacy.
be in Congress or the President of the United States, can
Have they
benefit greatly.
forgotten about diplomacy? Why is it automatically, oh, they're fucking bad, we're not going to have anything to deal with them? Fuck them. War. Ah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
By going and engaging, boots on the ground, learning and listening and meeting directly with people, whether they be adversaries or friends.
Last question. Who do you blame? Who's responsible for the war in Ukraine?
Putin
The
started
US?
the war in Ukraine.
Thank you. Senator Moran, before your questions, I want to extend all of our condolences in particular to you for the loss of life for your fellow Kansans last night in that air crash. Our prayers are with all of your people back home who lost loved ones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So many people here and throughout the halls of Congress have been very kind and expressing their condolences, and I appreciate you saying this in this setting just now. Lieutenant Colonel Gabbard, you were asked in your questionnaire about your priorities, and you listed Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah and North Korea. You also mentioned Russia. But the only thing you said about Russia in fully explaining why it's a priority is ending the war with Russia. When you talk about Russia, what are your fears or policy priorities beyond ending the war? How do you see Russia as a threat to the United States?
Senator, if confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, it will be paramount for me to assess where our intelligence gaps may exist so that I can provide the President and all of you with the most accurate full picture of that threat assessment to directly answer your questions. I think that it is a complex environment. Russia remains a strategic competitor. There are a number of concerns that have to do with their nuclear weapons, as well as how the decisions and policies that are being made by this body and by the President will impact our own national security, which is my foremost concern.
I want to make certain that in no way
Holy
does Russia
shit,
get a
Vlad. Long
pass
time no see,
in
brother.
either
Hey,
your
community
mind
cardio.
or your heart, or in any policy recommendation you would make or not make.
Senator, I'm offended by the question because my sole focus, commitment, and responsibility is about our own nation, our own security, and the interests of the American people. In carrying out the responsibilities of the Director of National Intelligence, if confirmed, no country, group, or individual will get a pass.
I'm sorry,
in
did
my
you say
fulfilling
America
that
first?
responsibility of providing that full intelligence picture so that you all can make the best informed policy decisions for the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. You have my commitment to be completely objective, unbiased, and apolitical, and I hope you understand my commitment to our country's interest.
I absolutely do. You have answered my question in the manner in which I wanted to hear, that you will do this in an objective manner.
That's a yes
provide the
vote.
information necessary, and that Russia, if it's a threat, you will tell us so and tell us the details of that threat.
Yes, Senator.
How would you restructure the national intelligence priority framework to better align with President Trump's national security
That's a good
goals?
question.
Senator, this is a discussion, if confirmed, I look forward to having with the President and his national security advisor, again, based on the threat assessment and based on the President's priorities. He has spoken about a number of different priorities in different parts of the world. I would work with them on that national intelligence priorities framework, which will serve as the foundation for the intelligence elements under ODNI.
Any recommendations that you have in mind to make to President Trump in that regard?
I want to make sure that any recommendations that I make to the president are fully informed. From where I sit now, I don't believe that I can make those recommendations. I take that responsibility seriously and wouldn't want to shortchange him without first doing the due diligence and work to make sure my recommendations are well-founded.
How will you, Lieutenant Colonel, as the DNI, if confirmed, meet the objectivity and political neutrality requirements to ensure that you're telling the White House what they need to hear
Facts based.
and not what they want to hear? A follow-up to that is, how will you handle conflicting intelligence reports from the various members of the intelligence community and present a broad intelligence picture to the president?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator. I hope that you have confidence in my ability to extract politics from what my role will be as Director of National Intelligence, because it's something I've done for almost 22 years now of wearing the uniform,
Yep.
both serving in the National Guard and the Army Reserve, even while holding political office. There is a brick wall between the two, and I have fulfilled that obligation in uniform, as I will as Director of
Military
National
is supposed to be
Intelligence if
apolitical.
confirmed. I think the president, I know the president values hearing a lot of different views, and I would make sure that in the intelligence community's responsibilities, that dissenting views are not only allowed, but encouraged, and where they present themselves, make sure that the president and you as policymakers are aware so that you can make your best informed decision.
Would you agree with me that bias and prejudice, if it exists any place, exists in both sides of an issue, both partisan sides of this place called Washington, D.C., and the goal, the effort that you will make is to make certain that all the information is presented in a nonpartisan, direct, and manner based upon the facts as known?
Yes, Senator, I agree, and you have my commitment. This is essential for the American people and all of you to have faith and trust in the intelligence products that are being delivered.
One of the greatest challenges is knowing who's telling us the truth.
Yep.
And we need a DNI who tells the truth. True?
Yes, I have a long record of speaking truth to power and would continue that commitment if confirmed in this role.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Moran. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Gabbard, I certainly want to applaud and express my appreciation for your service, both in the military and in the Congress. Two very challenging jobs, and I want to thank you for that. I noted that Edward Snowden was in Hawaii, of all places, for a year and a half before he fled to Hong Kong and then on to Russia. Did you ever meet him or have any contact with him during that period, or subsequently with telephone calls, emails, Zooms, contact with he or his lawyers?
No, Senator, not at any time have I had contact with Edward Snowden.
Yeah, that's not her
And
job.
You introduced a bill in 2020 that was essentially a pardon. It basically said all charges should be dropped. You had a lot of whereases in that bill. Where did the factual basis for those whereas clauses come from?
Senator, if I recall, in that bill, it came from publicly available information.
I see. And were you aware that there was a bipartisan committee report from the House Intelligence Committee in 2016 on Snowden's activities?
I don't recall specifically at that time, but I am aware of that committee's report and executive summary that was reported publicly. I did not have access to the classified report that summary was based on.
Did you read that report prior to filing your bill in 2020?
Senator, I don't recall specifically. I remember reading a lot of materials prior to filing that bill.
Well, the bipartisan committee report, the first item, Edward Snowden perpetrated the largest and most damaging public release of classified information in U.S. intelligence history.
Right.
It goes on to say Snowden caused tremendous damage to national security, and the vast majority of the documents he stole have nothing to do with programs impacting individual
So if he
privacy.
gave up all these secrets, not really secrets, he let everything in out of the bag, and we were at a moment of weakness and we had to recalibrate, then why did nothing happen? Nothing happened. we're still here. I mean, you guys gave everyone's data. All our data is out there in the metaverse because of Social Security. Yeah, in case y'all didn't know that. Happened a few months ago.
But you don't recall ever seeing the work of that committee.
I'm aware of those conclusions drawn.
You're aware
Edward
now.
Snowden.
Were you aware at the time?
Yes, I was, Senator.
And-
Edward Snowden broke the law. There's no question about that. He should not have released all of that information that caused that harm.
How
There's
many
no question
documents-
about
But he
that.
still deserves a fair
Documents did
trial,
you
right?
release?
I know that he took over 1 million documents. I don't know specifically how many of those million he specifically released.
Well, you stated very unequivocally today, Snowden broke the law, but you introduced a bill in Congress along with Congressman Matt Gaetz to essentially pardon him. So
That-
Right.
he broke the law, but it wasn't all that serious? Is that what you thought in 2020?
I take very seriously upholding our Constitution and have sworn an oath to support and defend that Constitution over 8 times in my life. My statements in the past have been reflective of the egregious and illegal programs that were exposed in that leak.
But you ignore the vast majority, as the committee found, bipartisan. I think Devin Nunes was the chair, Adam Schiff was the vice chair. The conclusion was that the vast majority of these things that he released had nothing to do with constitutional rights, the Fourth Amendment, but indeed were enormous compromises of our national security.
Yeah,
Senator,
absolutely.
I
We got
focused
taken down.
on raising concerns around egregious, illegal, and unconstitutional programs that our government was conducting that clearly violated Americans' Fourth Amendment rights. I think the most important thing that I hope all of you find to be relevant here is that if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I would take seriously the responsibility to protect our nation's secrets, just as I have for almost 20 years of holding a security clearance of some sort myself, either secret or top secret, and have never once violated the responsibility and privilege that
Yo,
comes with
those secret and TS clearance application process, bro, let me tell you, I had to go back, almost 20 years. I had to tell them every school I went to, high school, where I lived, and I was a military brat, so I moved around a fucking lot. And then I had to find 2 references for somebody that was there at that time period. And then I had to do an interview. It's fucking crazy. And it took like 3 months just for secret. But the whole paperwork process was probably the most part. The longest because, well, I don't know, fucking know. But, and then the TS, they go back 20 years? 2015? 2020? Something like that. Maybe the secret's 10 years and TS is 20 years. But either way, you have to have references. And if you didn't know anybody, it's pretty fucking hard to make up a reference. And you can't use the same one twice.
withholding that clearance and have a specific action plan in place to make sure that there is not another Snowden-type leak in the future.
I think you testified that you never saw the classified version of this report.
That's correct.
On page 22 of the report, there's a heading that's not classified that says, what damage did Snowden cause?
Oh, a heading.
And then there's a lot of redacted material. Did that not raise a red flag for you? Or do you not recall
Edward
seeing
Snowden broke the law. Like I said, I did not
that
have
in it?
I did not have access to that classified.
Did you seek access to it?
I believe so, yes. This was quite some time ago.
But you still introduced your bill to essentially get
I
it
take
apart.
very seriously the protection of American civil liberties and our Fourth Amendment rights. If confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I'd make sure that there is no further Snowden-type leak in the future, and that those who have concerns have legal channels to raise those concerns so that we don't violate and release our nation's secrets.
There are about 20
Thank you,
countries in
Senator
the
King.
world that don't.
Senator King, time has expired.
Huh?
Senator Langford.
Tulsi, it's good to see you again. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
That we got a chance to be able to spend together and be able to talk through a lot of these issues. Thanks for your service to the country, both in Congress, though you were in the wrong party at the time, and your service to the country through your service there, including in my great state in Oklahoma, that you had the opportunity to be able to serve there. I want to give an opportunity for you to be able to answer a few things on it, and I want to set some context. There's been a lot of questions about 702 and about Edward Snowden, and it may seem like this is repetitive to be able to come through it, but there are thousands of intelligence employees and folks that have also taken an oath to the country and to the Constitution. They serve our country every day. They're the folks that don't have a uniform on, that no one ever says thank you to them, and no one ever buys them lunch because people don't know who they are.
No.
But they every day put their lives on the line, and they work very hard to be able to protect Americans. And when Edward Snowden got mad at his employer that he didn't get the promotion that he wanted and started harvesting information, and then found some things that he didn't like on it, and then kept going, and then released them to media and went to China, and then went from China to Russia and became a Russian citizen and continued to be able to layer out intelligence unrelated to the civil liberties of any American, and then said, I have more and I can release them at any time I want.
So I'm curious, what damage did he actually do? He exposed government I can't think of the word right now. Exposing the shit the government was doing that was definitely illegal, unconstitutional. Programs that, we're not supposed to know about. Huh. But they don't want it. It's all because they're spying on other people. As long as they're using it to spy on other people, don't worry about it. My brain just fucking broke, guys. Government
They don't
overreach.
see him as brave. They see him as a traitor. And the concern among so many here, and I think what a lot of the folks in the
Corruption.
intelligence
Jesus
community
Christ.
that you
Why couldn't I remember two fucking easy ass words? I'm retarded. Oh, wait, I can't say that. Somebody else's catchphrase is that.
have the responsibility to oversight is, they want to hear that you also believe the same thing, that not just he broke the law, but that he's a traitor, because they don't want that to ever happen again. And all the sources that they had, that they trusted and that trusted them, now their lives were at risk.
Think about that. Remember, he just said they don't want that happen again. Do you guys remember the two military guys, the Air Force and the Army guy, that also released information recently in the past 2 years? What's up? Where are they at? What's going on with them?
And all the programs that they had that were determined lawful all collapsed, and that intelligence then was gone, and the president didn't have access to a lot of information for decision making. So this is a big deal to everybody here, because it's a big deal to everybody that you'll also oversee in that role as well. And so it's helpful for them to be able to hear your heart on this. So was Edward Snowden a traitor?
Senator, my heart is with my commitment to our Constitution and our nation's security.
Ours too.
Thank you. Yeah. I have shown
Now,
throughout.
the thing is, can she officially call Edward Snowden a traitor? Was he convicted? I don't remember. Let me double check.
My almost 22 years of service in the military, as well as my time in Congress, how seriously I take the privilege of having access to classified information and our nation's secrets. And that's why I'm committed, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, to join you in making sure that there is no future Snowden-type leak. And I would do so by taking 4 specific actions. Number 1, again, to make sure that there are no illegal and unconstitutional programs. Limiting in a big way those who have access to our nation's top secrets through security clearance reform, making sure that every single person in the workforce knows about the legal whistleblower channels available to them, and making sure that there's a direct line available to me should anyone have concerns. If people choose to step outside of those legal channels to raise any concerns about programs or actions that exist within the intelligence community that are classified, there will be no excuse to do so, and they should be charged and prosecuted under the law.
Was he a traitor at the time when he took America's secrets, released them in public, and then ran to China and became a Russian citizen?
Senator, I'm focused on the future and how we can prevent something
Dude, I
like
don't
this
think he was
from
ever
happening
convicted.
again.
So you would have the responsibility to be able to give counsel to the president.
It was
which is
just a
great
criminal
privilege.
complaint
You already
lodge.
have his ear, quite frankly, and y'all have a great relationship on that, which is very beneficial. But when President Trump chose to take the strike on Soleimani, he was also at that same time going through an impeachment in the House. And you were kind of
So the three things they were charging him with all carry a 10-year prison term. So it doesn't seem anything like would they call him a traitor, because if he got convicted, he'd only gotten a maximum of 30 years, not life or death. Pretty sure treason's death, right? What's going on, Nanya?
tough on him at the time about that. You called it a declaration of war. You said that the Soleimani strike will lead to an outcome that will further undermine our national security. As a member of Congress, I also take seriously declaration of war and our responsibility in that. He was acting in a way that he came out and the intelligence gave that Soleimani was in the process of preparing a strike on American citizens and those folks that were in the field at the time. I guess the question that I have is, the ODNI will sit with the president, will
Dude, that was
provide
like 8 years
options
ago.
to the president and say, here are the options that you could take. Would you have presented a Soleimani strike at that time, looking
Short
back
bus.
at it now in retrospect and saying this is an option you could take and here's how to be able to do it?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. It's an important question. If confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I would make sure that the President has all of the objective analysis and intelligence reporting so that he can make that best informed decision, including all of the options and actions that he has available to him, which should exist alongside an assessment of what the possible repercussions or responses to those actions may be. My own personal views have no place in that assessment and that providing to the President and his advisors with all of those options available.
Thank you, Senator Langford. Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's crazy they want to call him a traitor and shit like that when the offenses, they don't say treason. Not the 3 charges they had against him were not for treason, and carried a maximum if convicted all 3 of 30 years. Isn't the fucking penalty for treason death?
I would like to repeat my colleague's question to you. Thank you for being here. To answer these questions and for your service. Was Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
Senator, I will also repeat my answer. He broke the law.
You said earlier that you were offended by a question that my colleague from Kansas asked, which I think was.
So hear me out. Treason is one of the most severe crimes committed against the U.S., carrying a minimum prison sentence of 5 years. So you can be a treasonist and just do 5 years and probably get it reduced to probation. That's crazy.
Was his duty as somebody on this committee.
Oh, by the way, that's 18 U.S. Code
fulfill his
2381.
responsibility to advise and consent. We are not here to be a rubber stamp for the President of the United States. So let me ask you again.
Lady J,
Do you
holy
believe,
fuck.
as the chairman of
Welcome to
this
the woodwork.
committee believes, as the vast majority of members of our intelligence agencies believe, that Edward Snowden was a traitor to the United States of America?
Senator, if confirmed as
This is when the
Director of
rubber hits
National
the road.
Intelligence, I will work with you to make sure that there is not another
moment
Snowden
for
like
social
leak.
media. It's not a moment to propagate theories, conspiracy theories, or attacks on journalism in the United States. This is when you need to answer the questions of the people whose votes you're asking for to be confirmed as the chief intelligence officer of this nation. As my colleague said, this is not about you. It's about the people that serve the intelligence agencies of the United States.
So who's in charge of the intelligence agency of the United States? Hopefully her soon, to get Israel gone.
Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
Yo, he just said we don't want the social media moments. That's what he's doing right there. He planned that. You know he planned this for his social media moment. So let's look it back. I want to see his social media moment.
The intelligence agencies of the United States. Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
Why is he getting aggressive with a female minority? Yo. Headline. Old white man scolds Samoan woman. Wow. I mean, if it was the other way around, that's what it would be.
That is not a hard question to answer.
Dude, and she's fucking just smiling at his ass.
High.
Senator, as someone who has
your
served
answer
in
yes
uniform,
or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
No.
as someone who has
I'll go on
worn
to
our
my
uniform
questions.
in combat, I understand how critical our national security
Apparently
is.
you don't. Apparently you don't. Let me ask you. I've worked very hard to put your own words here in front of the committee. Not, fake news, not conspiracy theories on the internet, but the actual things that you have said. On February 23rd.
It's funny because the whole Snowden thing's also a conspiracy, but they're pushing that. We're not here to push conspiracy theories. Yet the whole Snowden thing, if it was right, he'd be fucking tried. Pretty sure he wouldn't be able to leave the country. No.
2022, at the very moment that Russian tanks were rolling across the peaceful border of Ukraine for the first time, you tweeted at 11:30 p.m. your time, this war and suffering could have easily been avoided if Biden administration / NATO had simply acknowledged Russia's legitimate security concerns regarding Ukraine's becoming a member of NATO. Did you say that, yes or no?
I believe
because it was actually an agreement. I'll look up the actual name to where NATO agreed not to expand any further east. Not to let any other, pretty much just leave anything east of, where, west. Wait. You know what I mean? So Ukraine, left, west, that's good. Ukraine, right, east, bad. And if I remember the part that he was going into, actually democratically voted to join the Russian Federation. 3.
you're reading my tweet, Senator.
Yes is the answer. A few months later, you said on your podcast, and I quoted it, quote, "But this regime change war against Russia that the U.S. and NATO are waging via their proxy in Ukraine."
Snowden was en route to South Africa, and he ended up in Russia, and then they took his passport. They revoked his passport, so he would be flagged from leaving anywhere.
Didn't begin when Putin invaded Ukraine. They had their eyes set on this objective long before that. Did you say that, yes or no?
No, Vlad. They even did interviews in the street, talking to the people in the streets, and they all said they wanted to be part of Russia.
There's
you.
a
The
lot
answer is
more.
yes.
You're quoting a podcast that
I'm
provided
happy
much
to have
more
a conversation
context.
with the chairman about whether I'm taking anything out of context. I don't think I am. And your answer is yes. Are you aware that your comments about proxy wars and Russia's legitimate security concerns, to quote your own words, are in alignment with what the Russians have said to justify their invasion of Ukraine? Yes or no?
Senator, I don't pay attention to Russian
So I'll
propaganda.
take
My
that as
goal is to
I'll
speak
take
the
that as
truth,
the answer is no.
regardless of whether
Thank
you like it or not.
I'll take that. That's fine. You said you are used to speaking truth to power.
Yes.
I'm shocked to hear you now say that, you are agreeing. I'm not shocked because I know you said it. You are agreeing that you basically said that Putin was justified in rolling over the peaceful border of Ukraine, the first time since World War II that a free nation had been invaded by a totalitarian state, and you were there at 11:30 p.m.
Yo,
that
that's the leader of
night
us invading everybody.
to say that you were with them, not us. And let me tell you something. You say you don't know because you don't read Russian propaganda. Russian state TV then aired your comments. Did you know that?
Senator, I think you should also quote the statement that I made criticizing Putin for his invasion
What
of
I
Ukraine.
would say, Mr. Chairman, with the last, it's up to all of us. We're the Senate. We get to decide whether we're going to confirm this nominee. Obviously, we didn't select this nominee. But
That's not what you
can't
do.
we do better than somebody who doesn't believe in 702? Can't we believe that somebody who can't answer whether Snowden was a traitor 5 times today?
Listen,
Who made
do you guys remember Matt Gates? Not Matt Gates. Was it Matt Gates? Or whoever, these senators and Donald Trump suing people for calling them certain names that they, weren't convicted of? So you're basically saying that's bad. But right now, you're saying he's a traitor. When the rule of law is he gets his day in court. He's innocent until proven guilty. And then he's got to get convicted, which he's never done. A criminal complaint was lodged. A criminal complaint. And it ended there.
excuses for Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine? The first time that I'm aware of any American official has done that? I'm questioning her judgment. That's the issue that's at stake here. And as you said, and I totally agree, this is about our intelligence officers. And you cannot answer. Most of what we do here is in secret. This is one of the very few opportunities that you will ever have to have a conversation with this panel in public. And the record is going to be very clear about the position you took with regard to Edward Snowden. And the record is going to be very clear about your reaffirmation of the statements you made in the middle of the night when Russia was invading the free country of Ukraine. And
Senator
I hope
Bennett,
we will
your
take
time-
that in
your time has expired.
consideration when
Senator
we
Bennett.
have this vote.
Your time has expired. I will note that during Senator Bennett's question and answer, there was 2 disturbances in the room. The first sounded like a cell phone. I would ask everyone on both sides of the dais, if you have not silenced or turned off your cell phone, please do so now. The second disturbance was the cries of a small child. We will welcome such disturbances because the cries of an infant are the sound of answered prayers. Senator Rounds.
Really?
Not only here, but the answered prayers in church when they cry as well, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you for your service to our country. I think part of the discussion here, as you can see, we feel very, very strongly about FISA 702. We work with it literally every day. As you can also tell, we have some very, very strong feelings here with regard to the actions of Edward Snowden. I want to come back, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to make any corrections or to make any other comments with regard to both of those issues that have been brought up here.
But before I get into that, I want to go back into a little bit of your previous history as well. You did serve as you served as a congressperson for what, 8 years?
Yes, Senator.
And during that time, you served on the Armed Services Committee.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time period, you did carry a TS-SCI clearance. You worked your way through that time period. Had an opportunity to look at a lot of information. Can you share just a little bit about the way that you've looked at that, not just as a member of the congressional delegation from Hawaii, but also during the time in which you were a lieutenant colonel serving up through and including a battalion commander? Talk about that a little bit, please.
Thank you, Senator, for your question. In both of those roles, I had exposure to different sides of how critical our national security is and the unique role that our intelligence community plays in ensuring our national security. My most recent deployment with the military was as part of a joint special operations task force to Djibouti and Somalia.
I've been
where
there.
our mission was to support the Somalis government and military's
I've been
focus
to
on
Djibouti,
defeating
the
al-Shabaab,
airfield.
which is al-Qaeda's element there within East Africa. One of the things that we came across there that I hadn't known previously, even having served in Congress for 8 years because it hadn't been focused on, was how al-Shabaab specifically was the biggest funder of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which again should be of unique concern and interest to our own national security concerns. Being able to engage with world leaders in both capacities, in uniform and as a member of Congress, being a customer of intelligence in both of those roles gives me a unique perspective, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, to come in with fresh eyes, to come in with some of the frustrations that I experienced as a member of Congress with the lack of information that we received
As a
from the
soldier.
intelligence community, oftentimes feeling as though everything we heard in a brief could have been read in the newspaper that morning. And the essential oversight role that all of you play here in Congress. You are unable to do so unless you are equipped with that intelligence and information. I'm committed to fulfilling that responsibility if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence.
Okay, now, when you and I first met, I told you that I thought you needed to kind of take a change in the direction that you were going with regard to how you were approaching the private conversations, and that we wanted you to sit down and meet with some folks who were directly involved in gathering the intelligence and so forth. You did that.
Yes.
And then we came back and we sat back down again. And what those individuals who I had talked to and I asked you to talk with shared with me that they thought that you were a quick study and that you had the opportunity to look at a number of the issues that this committee considers to be extremely sensitive, and 702 in particular. Now, I've got about a minute left, but I want to give you an opportunity in front of this committee to share your position in your own words about how strong or how much it is needed with regard to the continuation of 702 and your support for it.
Thank you, Senator. 702 provides a unique security tool and capability that is essential for our national security. There are a number of areas that we would be blind from a national security perspective without this capability. It also must exist next to having safeguards in place to ensure Americans' civil liberties are protected. As you know, Senator, it is illegal.
Dude, yeah. 702 is FISA. And the FBI uses it. Interesting.
Legal under 702 to target any U.S. person. There are several other sections within FISA that speak to some of the civil liberties reforms that you all passed in last year's legislation.
So let me finish with this. 702 in its current form stays in effect for the next year. You would agree that there were reforms made which fixed a number of the items that you had a problem with in the first place. Is that correct?
It's correct, Senator, and some of those reforms that you enacted were a specific to some of the legislation that I introduced back when I was in Congress, such as prohibiting the abouts collection as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Round. Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Thank you,
great.
Ms. Gabbard, for your service, both in Congress and in our U.S. military. I want to talk to you a little bit about your perspectives on China. How do you view China in your national security role?
Our relationship with China is one that is complex, given how closely our economies are linked. There are a number of challenges and threats that need to be navigated with respect to China, some of which have come up most recently with this very serious cyber exploitation in Salt Typhoon and Volt Typhoon that seemingly took us by surprise, and the compromising of our major telecom companies and an area of significant and great concern.
So some of your past statements that are relevant to China are concerning because I don't think it fully appreciates China's perspective towards the United States. For example, with regard to TikTok. Your past statements have essentially said that requiring domestic ownership of TikTok is a violation of civil liberties, and the national security concerns are complete BS. Can you explain why you have this view on TikTok?
The position that I previously made, obviously not as a member of Congress, as you consider the TikTok legislation, were centered around the protection of Americans' First Amendment rights and the lack of data privacy legislation, frankly, that would apply to TikTok, Facebook, X, all of these different social media applications that collect on us as users of these applications. There were other provisions within that legislation that granted very vague and grandiose authorities to the president on deciding which private companies are or are not a national security threat.
So let's talk about China specifically, because this is where I want to make sure you understand what's at stake. We've had concerns over many years that when China owns infrastructure, it can manipulate that infrastructure. It can use it for spying. It could use it, turn it on or off. And
It's almost like you guys didn't forget that you were allowing China to buy our fucking farms. And guess what? Sarah Huckabee Sanders says, fuck you, China, get out of our state. Pretty sure other states have done it, but I know Arkansas for sure.
actually address some of the most recent cyber attacks that we believe China had relevant participation. The challenge is if China owns TikTok, it means they can spy on the United States, on the American people. It can take all the data from our children. It can change the narrative about what people are talking about through their
Dude, everybody's information, it's out there. You know what? Let me find that out.
algorithms. If it wants to create misinformation or malign foreign influence, it's very easy. So can you understand why it's so important that we require domestic ownership of TikTok?
I understand the concern, Senator. I would just reiterate some of my concerns that I stated in the past about how this really is an issue about data privacy because so much of what is collected by all of these, even U.S.-owned
Understood. I'm
companies,
just
can be
concerned
sold
about
to any
adversaries.
country.
I get it, and that is a bigger issue for Congress to wrestle, and I am all in for that conversation. But I want you to appreciate China. What is your view with regard to Taiwan? Do you think it is something that your intelligence efforts will understand how important our relationship is with Taiwan, specifically on chips manufacturing? I think President Trump has most recently decided to have a 100% tariff on all chips from Taiwan. And your statements, particularly about the bill we passed, the CHIPS Act, to make sure that domestic production is invested in, and so that we have that supply chain, and so we have that national security. But your public statements about the CHIPS Act have been very negative and don't seem to appreciate how important that independence is for our national security, to be beholden to China, to be beholden to Taiwan, to be in a place where we can't do our own national intelligence.
Yes, Senator, I fully support the investment in building and strengthening our own domestic capabilities. If I recall, that legislation had a lot of other provisions in it that had nothing to do with the production of our own capability, and I felt were a distraction away from and a potential obstacle towards achieving that.
So you will recommend to the president.
So, that article is from the summer, this past summer. All data with people's social security numbers was breached. Y'all didn't know that. And they're worried about
that we
TikTok.
continue to invest in the semiconductor industry in
It's
the
already
United
all
States
over the
for our
black
own
market.
independence as well as our own national security.
Yes, Senator, and I would base my recommendations on a number of these, all of these issues, if confirmed as DNI, based on the full assessment of the intelligence picture so that the president understands the ramifications and the potential cost towards any one of these policy positions that he will make and all of you will make.
And last, I want to return to the Soleimani strike. At the time, you said it was illegal, that President Trump did was illegal, would cause very significant problems down the line. What is your position on that strike, and will you be able to advise the president in future issues with regard to national security?
Those broader issues that I raised with regard to war powers, I have been consistent on. I didn't have access to all of the information behind that strike at the time, and my concerns were that that may be an escalatory action. President Trump was right. There was no escalation beyond that, and his policies towards Iran turned out to be very effective for our own national security.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand.
Can I just, do you disagree with the president taking away the protection for those who are now being targeted in retaliation for the Soleimani strike, such as previous Secretary Pompeo?
Senator, I can't answer that without being able to look at the intelligence assessment and the threat assessment for that or other decisions.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. Senator Young.
Like they're sitting there like, I want to know what you're gonna do right now. I don't give a shit if you don't have all the information that you're supposed to have. I want what you would do right fucking now. That's not how you do it.
Tulsi, good to see you. We had a nice visit in the office.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being
I'd
here
like to have
today.
a nice visit in the office.
It was clear from that visit in the office
Look,
that
she's
we
so
share a
prim
lot
and
of
proper, too.
concerns about ill-advised foreign regime change interventions, about the weaponization in certain instances of our domestic law enforcement and intel authorities. Let me talk about something, Edward Snowden, on which we may not agree. It's been recognized he fled overseas with the numbers 1.5 million classified documents. He shared them with the press. He absconded to China and Russia. Do you have any response to the bipartisan findings of the House Intel Committee, which stated that, quote, Snowden caused tremendous damage to national security, unquote, including to military, defense, and intelligence programs of great interest to America's adversaries? I'll give you an opportunity to respond, hopefully briefly.
Yeah, those leaks were so bad that he could get a maximum of 30 years.
Thank you,
I mean,
Senator.
look at that smile.
Adversaries. I'll give you an opportunity to respond, hopefully briefly.
Thank you, Senator. As I've said before, Edward Snowden broke the law, and I do not agree with how he chose to release information and the extent of the information and intelligence that he released. It's my focus on the future, and I think we can all agree that we do not want to have another Snowden-type leak, and I've laid out specific actions, if confirmed as DNI, to do that.
Okay. Well, it's notable you didn't say, yes, he clearly hurt in various ways our national security. The same House committee also reported that based on DOD assessments, should the Chinese or Russians access certain documents relating to DOD capabilities that we know Snowden stole, quote, American troops will be at greater risk in any future conflict, unquote. Do you have any reflection?
Oh. So, it hurt us badly? I mean, I went to Afghanistan after this leak happened. Is this world even real? Am I here?
On this assessment?
I would be very concerned about that. I have not had access to the information or intelligence that led to that assessment, but anything that puts our men and women in uniform unnecessarily at risk should be a grave concern.
Yeah. I share that
Sorry
sentiment.
to say, but when they say we don't need to put our men and women in an unnecessary risk, how about you get them out of that country? Problem solved. Problem solved.
The former Marine Corps intelligence officer. When we find that Americans, whether private citizens or contractors or uniformed personnel, have shared sensitive designs about military technology or plans to a foreign government. However well-intentioned, we rightfully throw the book at them. Snowden did just that. Yet you have argued, and many times, that he should be pardoned. You introduced legislation, as has been discussed here. He's been able to publicly hide, as I see it, behind this facade of being a so-called whistleblower. But he likely endangered American lives through his actions. So as the leader of the intelligence community, how would you think you would be received based on some of these past actions to support or even to pardon Edward Snowden? Rank and file intelligence analysts and intelligence professionals. How do you think it'll be received?
You know, after all this,
I'm grateful, Senator, to...
It doesn't really matter because Edward Snowden is no longer an American citizen. He's a Russian citizen.
Have received letters of endorsement and support from many current and former individuals who've worked within the intelligence community, those who've worked or are still working within our military, because I believe they trust that my goal, my sole goal and interest is in our nation's security and upholding our oath to the Constitution. And they trust that if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will take the very specific steps that I have laid out in informing every single person within the intelligence community about the legal pathways they have to blow the whistle or to bring any concerns to the forefront, to include coming directly to members of Congress, to limit access so that we don't have people who are E3s or E4s or people in any situation taking it upon themselves to release classified information.
Oh, why did she mention E3 and an E4? She's letting you know that it happened without letting you know. Because you're just supposed to forget about it.
Giving them a direct line to me to once again make sure that we are all fulfilling our responsibility to
Tulsi,
ensure our national security and uphold our Constitution.
Thank you. Tulsi, was Edward Snowden false to an obligation or false to a duty?
I don't understand what you're saying. False?
Yes. Did he betray a duty? But did he betray the trust of the American people? Which is, according to Merriam-Webster, that's the definition of a traitor.
Edward Snowden broke the law, and he released this information in a way that he should not have. He also acknowledged and exposed information that was unconstitutional, which drove a lot of the reforms that this body has made over the years to make sure that Americans' constitutional rights are protected.
Well, for what it's worth, Mr. Snowden is watching these proceedings. He's posted on social media even, indicating that Tulsi Gabbard.
Interesting. He's right. One who betrays another's trust or is false to an obligation or duty. Anybody and everybody is a traitor by that definition. All of Congress, by this definition, are traitors.
Should indicate that I harmed national security. This may be the rare instance in which I agree with Mr. Snowden. I think it would befit you and be helpful to the way you are perceived by members of the intelligence community if you would at least acknowledge that the greatest whistleblower in American history, so-called,
what's up, Rockstar?
Harm national security by breaking the laws of the land around our intel authorities. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Young. Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Gabbard, I want to first say thank you for your service to this country.
Likewise.
In Congress and in the Army, and thank you for meeting with me a couple of weeks ago, and thank you for being here today. You're nominated to lead and coordinate across the intelligence community's numerous sources of collection and analytic capabilities. In a few sentences, can you describe how you make assessments and how you're going to sift through all this intelligence and make careful and thoughtful conclusions.
Yes, Senator, there are great professionals who work within the intelligence community. I will build a strong team around me as they present the intelligence reporting to provide to the president through the president's daily brief and to respond to issues and concerns that this body has. I will welcome dissenting voices to be able to make sure that this information intelligence is thoroughly vetted prior to presenting it, and make sure that the truth is reported, whether that truth is convenient or not.
Well, thank you,
Damn.
Colonel Gabbard, and I appreciate that. The president and others are going to rely on that. I want to discuss such an assessment made by the IC. For years, the U.S. analyzed evidence of numerous chemical weapons attacks in Syria. Eventually, we were able to assess that Bashar al-Assad was responsible for a number of these attacks that slaughtered
Remember the
his own
red line
civilians.
that Obama had?
Do you accept the conclusion broadly that Assad used chemical weapons against Syrians?
Yes.
That was the whole red line thing with fucking Barack Obama. If you use these weapons, you're crossing a red line, and then we'll be forced to take action. That was during Obama's administration. So why don't we go question them? Oh, fuck me, what did I do?
And I'm on the record for years of agreeing with that broad assessment.
Thank you. Among the attacks the U.S. assessed Assad was responsible for, two that occurred in Douma and Khan Sheikhoun in Syria. As a member of Congress and as a presidential candidate, and as recently as this month, in your written responses to this committee, you have cast doubt on the assessment that Assad is culpable in these two attacks. Is that still your position?
Senator, I raised those questions given conflicting information and evidence that was presented at that time.
Well, thank you. So to help inform the public.
This is, look at her, so this, God damn it.
At that time.
Purse your lips. He's looking at the guy like, are you fucking stupid? What are you getting at? And this guy's like, yeah, that motherfucker's dumb as shit.
Well, thank you. So to help inform the public, the Trump administration released declassified intelligence in 2017 and again in 2018, showing how experts analyzed multiple types of evidence, satellite imagery, medical experts' witnesses, describing sources and showing the reasoning used to determine Assad's culpability in using these chemical weapons, including in Douma and Khan Sheikhoun in these attacks, the ones that you questioned. I have two documents I want to submit for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Admitted.
Thank you. Were you aware of the declassified assessments, the one I referenced?
Yes, I was.
And as a member of the House Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, did you take time to review these?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And can you explain to me then why you doubted the intelligence community's conclusions in these two cases, Douma and Khan Sheikhoun, but not the others? And please be specific.
Sometimes I think they use these intelligence, committee assessments to, make an assessment of whether or not it goes their way or not. So with these assessments, we're doing the investigations, assessments. So whatever way we want it to is the way whatever the investigator wants it to be, the government wants to be, the investigator is going to just say, yep, that's totally it.
These two cases were being looked at as to be used as a pretext for major military movement, and my fear was a repeat of the deployment of another 500,000 soldiers like we saw in Iraq towards what was the Obama administration's goal, which was regime change in Syria. The question specifically that I raised around these two.
Bro, I'm going to tell you what. I was there for that surge as well, and a little before it. Those troops were fucking needed. Bro, let me tell you. definitely helped squash a lot of what was going on against our own. Intelligence got better because we had more boots on ground, and by more boots on ground, we had more people out in the streets showing their presence. But it took some shit for the surge to happen.
About because there were two reasons. One, that assessment was made with high confidence and low information. The information that they had came from those on the ground in an al-Qaeda controlled area and therefore were al-Qaeda linked sources. And there was conflicting information that came from the UN's Office on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons inspectors, as well as an MIT professor, Ted Postel,
So I
who
want to talk
looked at
about him
these
for a second.
extensively.
So did you look into his credentials, yes or no?
Yes.
And were you aware of his appearances on Russian Today, which is used by the Russians to disseminate government-approved messages?
No.
Were you aware Postal relied on a chemistry student with a record of defending the Assad regime?
At that time, I was not. I have been made aware since.
Do you consider this person or these two individuals now, do you consider them a better source for the chemistry of sarin gas than the U.S. intelligence community?
I assess that at the time, the information, I don't know the second person you're referring to, but MIT professor Ted Postel and the inspectors of the OPCW provided some credible questions that deserved examination.
Okay, thank you. Did you attempt to weigh Postal's claims against the significant evidence and assessments already conducted by the IC?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. So here's my concern here, Colonel. When we began this, you described a thoughtful approach to analyzing intelligence and reaching conclusions. This is what we expect of our professionals. But we just kind of walked through how you came to question Assad's use of chemical weapons in these two cases with a different approach. And I don't reject seeking out differing viewpoints. We need to do that. But you started from a place of doubting the conclusions of the U.S. intelligence community, and then you sought out information that confirmed your viewpoint. That led you to embrace the opinions of two individuals that I think we disagree on this. You think they had expertise, I do not, and others do not. But these individuals were sympathetic to Russia and the Assad regime. It also led you to minimize or discount the overwhelmingly information that contradicted your viewpoint, including the expert assessments of our own intelligence community. And they don't get it right 100% of the time. I get that. But what I have seen makes it clear that at the same time that you were skeptical of our intelligence community's assessments, you would not apply the same skepticism to information that came from sympathizers of Russia and Assad. And I think that's something that we should all be concerned about. Thank you, and I'm sorry for going over my time.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. I want to recognize and welcome to the committee our newest member, Senator Budd, although we all regret Senator Rubio's departure. We're all pleased, as evidenced by the 99-0 vote, that he is now the Secretary of State, and that also pleased that we have a great new member on our committee. Senator Budd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm grateful for your leadership here as well. Colonel Gabbard, great to see you again. I enjoyed meeting you in my office a while back, and I've enjoyed our friendship and our time serving together in the U.S. House. So as you know, Section 3023 of Title 50 states any individual nominated for appointment as DNI shall have extensive national security expertise. You served 4 terms as a member of the House of Representatives, which is a constitutional office, and throughout your tenure, you were a member of the Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. Is that correct?
Oh.
Yes, Senator.
You also served over 2 decades in the U.S. Army.
21 years.
Holding commands at multiple levels. And
I mean, if we're being
administrations of both.
We're being nitpicky, I also served over 2 decades because I did exactly 20 years and 7 days. That's over 2 decades, right?
Political parties. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
Throughout your time in the U.S. House and in the Army, You've been both a consumer of intelligence and a policymaker.
She was civil affairs.
How important is it for the intelligence community to provide timely,
Civil affairs
relevant,
is
factual, and
intelligence
objective?
gathering. When she went there with the SF teams, that's what they were doing. Intelligence gathering.
Intelligence to policymakers.
Senator, it is nothing less than a matter of our national security. Too often in the multitude of intelligence failures that our country has seen, that objective has not been met. Now, CIA Director Ratcliffe talked about in his testimony before this committee how the CIA's own internal metrics have shown that analytic objectivity has gone down within that organization. This is the very kind of thing that I would seek to address if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, is ensuring that politics, biases, or personal views are checked at the door. I would lead by example by doing it myself, and ensuring that that intelligence analysis and reporting meets the objective that the President and Congress requires, which is no politics, no personal
Cat doesn't believe in personal space unless
abuses,
it's hers.
and making sure that that objectivity in a timely, relevant fashion is brought to the President so that we can get ahead of problems in ensuring our national security rather than being caught on our heels and being forced to respond to them.
Thank you for
Proactive,
that.
not
I think it's clear from your
reactive.
background experience that you more than meet the statutory requirements for this position. I want to switch gears a little bit. There's been a lot of discussion today. I think it's a necessary discussion about your position on 702, Section 702 of FISA. So I've personally had concerns, and I think we even talked about this when we served in the House together, and I actually voted against its reauthorization when I was in the House. However, I recently voted to reauthorize Section 702 with additional safeguards to end the politicization of the tool and to ensure privacy and civil liberties that they're protected. So, Ms. Gabbard, tell us, how has your thinking on Section 702 developed over time and why? And if confirmed, what will you do to ensure that this new statutory safeguards, that they're fully implemented?
Well, Senator, as you
She
pointed
agreed,
out,
Jay,
many of the
100%.
concerns that we raised when we served in the House of Representatives
But
were centered
when
around
you
the
go
lack of
against Hillary
safeguards
Clinton, and
to
that was her biggest, that's what's her downfall in the Democratic Party, is she ran against Hillary Clinton in the primary. And she fucking embarrassed Hillary Clinton because she was the Democrats' rising star until that point.
protect Americans' Fourth Amendment rights and civil liberties as it pertains to searching of U.S. persons with that incidental collection that occurs under 702. You and I both know and agree that the national security capability that is provided by Section 702 that enables this foreign surveillance on non-U.S. persons overseas is critical, period. My commitment is to make sure that our national security tools are maintained to fulfill that requirement while also protecting Americans' Fourth Amendment rights and protection against unlawful search and seizure. There are a number of those reforms that you referenced, such as the prohibition of abouts collection, which we brought up when we served in the House, making sure that 100% of U.S. persons by the FBI on this incidental collection are reviewed by the Attorney General herself. There are a number of other reforms that I believe strengthen significantly those safeguards, a number of them that I had worked to try to bring into place when I was in the House of Representatives. I look forward, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, to overseeing and assessing the implementation of these reforms and reporting back to you as you begin to consider next year's reauthorization and meeting that mark of ensuring our security and upholding Americans' Fourth Amendment protections.
Thank you. Switching gears a little bit, talk briefly, if you will, about the dual task of simultaneously protecting whistleblowers and protecting classified information.
Senator, there are more than sufficient legally protected routes for whistleblowers to come forward should they have concerns on any actions occurring within the intelligence community.
Vindman did it.
I've spoken about the additional protections that I personally will put in place if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, understanding the seriousness of protecting.
Alexander Vindman, whistleblower, protected big time by the Democrats. That fat son of a bitch.
Our nation's secrets, and one that I hold personally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Budd. I will recognize Senator Wicker, an ex officio member of our committee, which is Latin for so powerful a man, he can go to any committee he wants and ask questions anytime.
I look at it differently, Mr. Chairman. I think what you're saying is that I'm the only non-voting member of this committee that's here at this hearing, and I've been at an Armed Services Committee hearing most of the morning. Let me ask about something that happened a long time ago and something about something that's happening right now. Colonel Gabbard, I was a member of the House of Representatives on 9/11, 2001. As a matter of fact, I was at the Pentagon that very morning when the attacks happened. Where were you when 9/11? We all remember where we were.
Yes, I was in Hawaii. There was a 5 or 6 hour time difference. And so when I woke up that morning, it was several hours.
Yo, you
and
can
I
tell she's
remember
actually
the
from
first
Hawaii.
thing I saw in waking up
Just by the
was
way
that
she says
horrific
Hawaii.
footage of those airplanes attacking the Twin Towers in New York City.
And I think
Jews?
You obviously have read a lot about it during the 24 plus years since that, and most Americans have. There's a general consensus that there was a massive intelligence failure that's caught us all by surprise, even though the World Trade Center had been attacked.
Hey, Zip, I can only watch this video. I can't play it because it'll copyright me.
Earlier, do you think stovepiping was a problem in our intelligence failure?
There's no question about it, Senator.
Oh, okay. Well, based on your reading, okay. Could you elaborate just
Yes,
a little? Yeah.
absolutely, Senator. When we looked back at the post 9/11 reporting and the post assessments that were made, it was very clear that there was stovepiping of information and intelligence that occurred at many levels, at the highest, but also at the lowest levels, where information that was collected by the FBI, information that was collected by the CIA, was not being shared. There was almost ships passing in the night, where if there was an integration of those intelligence elements and information being shared, it is highly likely that that horrific attack could have been prevented.
And that's the reason, really, your position was created. There's been some discussion this morning. I have not been able to listen in, but I understand there's been some discussion about reforming the Office of D&I to eliminate redundancy and increase effectiveness. Do you worry that in doing so, we might be getting back to the same problem that we had in 2001?
The problem that we had in 2001, Senator, remains at the forefront of my mind. And as you said, this is exactly why the OD&I was created. Given my limited vantage point not being in this seat, I am concerned that there are still problems with stovepiping that need to be addressed. And in some cases, my concern would be that unnecessary bureaucratic layers may be contributing to that problem. This is where coming in and being able to really take a fresh look, given my experience and my background, will be essential to making sure that the OD&I is accomplishing the reason why it was created in the first place.
Okay, and I have a lot of suggestions about how to make the Department of Defense more efficient also. I would simply caution you before I move on to my other quick question, that as we are trying to eliminate overlaps, that we avoid getting back to the thing that
Well, the
created
overlap's right,
your
Steve,
agency
right.
to start with.
Do it all
Now,
the
let me
time
just
in the
ask
military.
about anomalous health incidents. I know you're not in the intelligence community yet, but having read, as most of us have, about these Havana syndrome incidents, what is your understanding of that?
Havana
now, and
syndrome?
What are your plans?
Yeah, Senator, thank you for this question. It's been
Thought that was
deeply
a conspiracy.
concerning throughout this period, from the first time this was discovered so long ago to where we are today, that the intelligence community still has failed to identify the source and the cause for Havana syndrome, as it's commonly known, even as many people who are in service are suffering the consequences of it. I look forward, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, to addressing this. Of course,
I did
making
a
sure
video
that
on this
those
last
who
year.
have been impacted are getting the care that they need and deserve, but getting to the truth behind how and why this has occurred.
Are you saying that we're not any closer to understanding where these came from?
Nope.
Based on my understanding, there has not been any definitive reporting from the intelligence community on the source and the cause for these anomalous health incidents.
Okay, well, perhaps you'd like to, I could follow up on the record.
I'd look forward to
that. I think there's some more public information that is
I thought
recent
Havana
about that.
syndrome
Thank
was
you, ma'am.
forgotten about.
Thank you, Senator.
Havana.
Senator Wicker. As I acknowledged at the outset, it is the custom of this committee to allow a follow-up question for senators who remain present at the end of the regular 5-minute round of questions. I remember everyone, this is a follow-up question, not a 5-minute round. We will have Ms. Gabbard in a closed session where each of us will have yet another 5-minute round of questioning.
Man,
Is there
how
any
come we
senator
can't get
who
these closed
wishes to
sessions?
be recognized for a follow-up question? Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gabbard, there was an area that I believe is still uncertain, and this is what my question's about. Earlier this week, the Trump administration illegally attempted to withhold federal funds from a broad range of organizations.
Such as?
I'm interested in knowing what you would do if President Trump told you to withhold congressionally approved
From
funds
NGOs.
from the Intelligence Community Inspector General.
A lot
So
of
my
this
question
withholding,
is,
God
if
damn it, you cocksucker, was for NGOs. And the immigration NGOs, the churches and all that stuff.
President Trump orders you to withhold appropriated funds from the Inspector General, will you refuse that illegal order?
I don't believe for a second President Trump would ask me to do something that would break the law.
Good answer.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if you are asked about an illegal order, what will you do? You can say, oh, it'll never happen. What will you do if you're dealing with an illegal order?
My commitment has been and will be, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, to comply with the law.
Are there, Senator Wyden,
Wyden,
you've actually asked 2 questions already.
Yep.
Senator
I'm not
Wyden.
asking a
You've
question.
asked 2
Yes,
questions.
you are. You've asked 2 of them.
I said there's 1 question allowed. Are
What
there
would
other
you
senators
do?
who would like a follow-up question? Senator King.
I'd like to follow up on my line of questioning about Edward Snowden and understand how you analyzed the facts leading up to your 2020 bill providing him with a pardon. There was the House committee report, which granted was redacted, but under the heading, "What damage did it cause?" were 5.5 pages of redacted material. I would have thought that would raise a question in your mind. Secondly, Edward Snowden, there are about 20 countries that don't have extradition treaties with the U.S. He chose to go to Russia, become a Russian citizen. Given that information, how did you decide to introduce a bill providing him with a pardon? Introducing a bill in the United States Congress is not the same as a tweet or a commentary on a podcast.
I think this is the clip I found that I watched.
Your apparent lack of interest in the scope of Edward Snowden's traitorous activities.
Senator, I've answered some version of this question many times in this hearing already. My foremost concern has been, remains, and will continue to be in upholding my oath to the Constitution to support and defend Americans' Fourth Amendment constitutional rights. If confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I'm committed to ensuring that we protect our nation's secrets by implementing a number of actions I've outlined so that those who have concerns about programs within our intelligence community, that we don't have another Snowden-like leak, and they are able to raise those concerns either directly with Congress or through any one of a number of legal paths that are available. And I think it's also important, and in line with many of the bipartisan concerns I've heard from this committee, in security classification, security clearance and classification reform, in narrowing severely those who have access to the most sensitive and compartmentalized.
Hey, Zip, I can't do Tucker. Tucker copyrights.
Intelligence
Some of them. I just
reporting
don't
and
know which ones.
capabilities.
Senator Bennett.
Thank you. Thank you for your generosity, Mr. Chairman, in letting us have a second question. Thank you again for hanging in there with this discussion, Colonel Gabbard. The House Intelligence Committee review of the Snowden disclosures found not only that he was a traitor, but that since Snowden's arrival in Moscow, he has had and continues to have contact with
There was
Russian
never a vote
intelligence
on the Snowden part, by the way.
services. You can see the deep concern on both sides of the aisle here. You had in your opening statement all kinds of complaints about former officials in the intelligence agencies, the United States press, the journalists, the media, Democrats, suggested that you weren't being treated fairly when you were coming here. No
She wasn't.
condemnation at all for
So much slander before she came here.
for this, which leads me to wonder why it is so hard for you to say that Edward Snowden was a traitor to our country. And the question I guess I have for you is how, if you can't say that, you feel that the concerns that this committee has, that we need somebody here who will actually honor their oath, as you said. Maybe I should make it easier for you. Edward Snowden did not honor his oath to the Constitution, which is what you just said was the most important duty, most important obligation that you have in this role. Why is he being treated like a folk hero by you instead of the traitor that he was?
Senator, as I said, my focus and what should be of relevance to all of you and everyone watching is what I will do as Director of National Intelligence to work with you to make sure there's not another Snowden-like leak, given the paramount importance of our national security and keeping our nation's secrets. I've laid out a number of ways that I intend to do that, if confirmed, in fulfilling my responsibility in this role.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to continue along with regard to China because it's such an important part of your portfolio. And I know on armed services, you've had hearings over the last 15 years about their architecture and how they're building up space capabilities, sea capabilities, Air Force capabilities, every type of capability they possibly could. And that aligned with their malign foreign influence and with their ambition with regard to Taiwan. It just creates a very dangerous scenario and concerning one. And so I wanted to ask you about Japan because recently, about a year and a half ago, 13 months ago, you said that you didn't think it was wise to allow Japan to build up their own defense architecture. And you thought it was short-sighted. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because our alliance with Japan is so important in our ability to defend against malign activities of China, not only geographically, but because for the last 50 years, they've been close allies, allies that we rely on. We share intelligence, we share operations. They are a great ally. So what was your concern about? And have you had any views that have shifted in that regard?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator. I agree. Japan has been a strong ally of the United States in a different capacity as a member of the Hawaii National Guard. I've gone and conducted training missions in Japan with the Japanese Self-Defense Force. Their forces and their constitution has been primarily focused on self-defense. The concerns that I had raised previously had to do with really looking at the bigger picture of the context of the history with Japan and China and recognizing the implications of how this kind of shift from a self-defense posture that Japan has had constitutionally to a more offensive posture could result in escalation. And given the history, we need to acknowledge what the ramifications could be to our own security interests. And that's something that I am looking forward to being able to provide to all of you and to the President, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, is that in-depth analysis and assessment so that various policies or actions that you all or the president are considering are fully thought through, given that broader context of nuance of history and the complexities that exist within the Asia-Pacific region. Having grown up there, I'm very familiar with.
But you do
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Gabbard, when Russia was denying Assad's use of chemical weapons, they accused the U.S. of supporting terrorists. This is a line that Putin used frequently during the Syrian civil war as he supported Assad. Syrian officials made similar comments. They did it repeatedly. They did it in public. They did it at the United Nations. In 2016, you gave an interview in which you said, and this is a quote, "The U.S. is providing direct and indirect support to terrorist groups in order to overthrow the Syrian government." And in 2019,
yeah, I can actually play it on Rumble.
the Democratic presidential debate stage, you said of President Trump, this is a quote, "This current president is continuing to betray us. We were supposed to be going after al-Qaeda, but over years now, not only have we not gone after al-Qaeda, our president is supporting al-Qaeda." So I'm interested to hear, what was your goal in saying these things? And did you consider, before saying them, the motives of Iran and Russia, what their motives might have been before making these claims?
Senator, as someone who enlisted in the military specifically because of al-Qaeda's terrorist attack on 9/11 and committing myself and my life to doing what I could to defeat these terrorists, it was shocking and a betrayal to me and every person who was killed on 9/11, their families, and my brothers and sisters in uniform. When, as a member of Congress, I learned about President Obama's dual programs that he had begun really to overthrow the regime of Syria, and being willing to, through the CIA's Timber Sycamore program that has now been made public, of working with and arming and equipping al-Qaeda in an effort to overthrow that regime, starting yet another regime change war in the Middle East. DOD train and equip program, again, begun under President Obama, is widely been known, looked at, and studied, that ultimately resulted in over $500 million being used to train who they called moderate rebels, but were actually fighters working with and aligned with al-Qaeda's affiliate on the ground in Syria, all to move forward with their regime change and not acknowledging what was obvious at the time and what has unfortunately borne true, which was that a regime change war in Syria, much like the regime change war.
So why aren't they taking us all the way back to the president when his shit started? The infamous red line comment.
Wars in Iraq, the toppling of Gaddafi and Mubarak, while these are all dictators, would likely result in the rise of Islamist extremists like al-Qaeda taking power. I shed no tears for the fall of the Assad regime, but today we have an Islamist extremist who is now in charge of Syria, as I said, who danced on the streets to celebrate the 9/11 attack, who ruled over Idlib with an Islamist extremist governance, and who has already begun to persecute and kill and arrest religious minorities like Christians in Syria.
I understand.
Why that should be acceptable to anyone is beyond me.
It shouldn't
is
be.
certainly
And I
not in our
understand, and
interest.
I appreciate your answer.
Zelensky's trying to get rid of
thank you.
Catholics in
My concern has to do with the tendency to repeat Russian and Syrian, and even in some cases, I think we'll get into in the closed session, Iranian information, and to discount what comes from our intelligence community.
Senator, every American deserves to know that people in our own government were providing support to our sworn enemy, al-Qaeda. That should not be acceptable by anyone.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Ms. Gabbard. In conclusion, Senator Warner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, one of the things I love about this committee, and I know folks who are here from Ms. Gabbard may not fully realize, but this has always been a bipartisan committee. And you know, my friend Richard Burr, who said we always kind of followed the truth. One of the things I was always proudest of in the very challenging Russia investigation was, you know, people would come in, they didn't know whether the staffer was a Democrat or Republican, because we were all looking out for the same thing. Ms. Gabbard, I support and commend you for your service. But we have heard this morning taking some individuals' advice on chemical attacks, not taking
Oh, no
American
shit.
intelligence community, that as we subsequently discovered, had iffy ties, not enough due diligence. We've heard this morning on your trip to Lebanon that you weren't fully aware that the folks who originally paid for the trip had these relations and ties to the Syrian party. I know I've asked, and you and I understand on the trip that you said you met with Shia religious figures and you didn't know who were there, who they were. I can understand that, although I can't imagine Shia religious figures that in the Bekaa Valley that didn't have ties to Hezbollah. And we can have a difference of opinion on TikTok. Chairman and I feel very strongly that it is a national security threat. On 702, I'm candidly confused. I thought you answered Senator Wyden you're in favor of a warrant. Senator Cornyn, I thought you backed off of that. And then on Edward Snowden, you won't back off of Brave. You won't back off of your legislation. You won't call him a traitor. And I think, again, about this is being watched by our allies around the world. I think even RT's been tweeting about it today.
He's never been convicted.
Blasting me. And the men and women of the intelligence community. I don't know how they're going to have confidence that if under your leadership, if somebody else stepped out, that you wouldn't take the same position that you've not walked away from on Mr. Snowden. So I guess my last question, and this is one I think was in some of the press, and I believe you and your husband took a trip to Rome last summer.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about the conference. I think you didn't ask who paid for the trip. I just want to get this off the record right now. Not if you and your husband reimbursed.
Who the fuck cares?
Did you pay for the trip in the outset, or?
There was
who
a
made the booking?
nonprofit organization that was coordinating with the Vatican to set up this meeting that
Oh.
was centered around peace and security interests in the Western
I'm
Hemisphere.
not going to go into.
That
I
paid
just
for
want
the
to
trip.
just make sure. So you didn't understand your trip was paid for by a gentleman named Pierre Lou.
To the Vatican. Democrats don't like Jesus. I forgot. Well, then again, she's Hindu.
Louvarier and the Clementi Foundation.
Roberto
The
Clemente?
nonprofit,
Okay,
my
I just say
understanding,
this-
was
there is
paid
extensive records
paid
of-
for the trip.
Mr. Louvarier has enormous ties to Konstantin Malovov. I'm mispronouncing his name, but who is somebody that America has sanctioned. I imagine we can get into this in the classified hearing.
Yo, you literally have somebody that represents the Virgin Islands who has close ties and financed by Jeffrey Epstein. She's in the house. What's up with that?
Again, the due diligence that's required before you take these trips or make these assumptions is something that I find very troubling. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Warner. I would also note that that same New York Times story reported that there's no indication that Ms. Gabbard did anything wrong on that trip. Ms. Gabbard, thank you for your time and for your testimony. Thank you, most importantly, for your service to our nation. As I said at the outset, it's no secret that this nomination is
Bro, they do not want Tulsi. And that should tell you a lot. When they're scared, just like RFK. You notice that they unanimously approved Rubio. But since we've been talking about this infamous red line, in case y'all didn't see it,
at this point, not ordered military engagement in the situation, but the point that you made about chemical and biological weapons is critical. That's an issue that doesn't just concern Syria, it concerns our close allies in the region, including Israel. It concerns us. We cannot have a situation where chemical or biological weapons are falling into the hands of the wrong people. We have been very clear to the Assad regime, but also to other players on the ground, that a red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus. That would change my equation.
Somehow under its safe.
In a situation this this volatile, I wouldn't say that I am absolutely confident. What I'm saying is we're monitoring that situation very carefully. We have put together a range of contingency plans. We have communicated in no uncertain terms with every player in the region that that's a red line for us, and that there would be enormous consequences if we start seeing movement on the chemical weapons front or the use of chemical weapons. That would change my calculations significantly.
By training Al-Qaeda to go against the guy. And now that he's fallen, guess what? Al-Qaeda definitely swept in the rubble, and they're like, thanks, guys. Thanks for doing the easy work. And before I let y'all go today, actually, I wanted to see some highlights of Miss Gabbard from the 2015-2016 Democratic primaries. She goes after Kamala, Tim Ryan, and Pete Buttigieg. I can't find any of the Hillary Clinton ones because that's pretty much like a rap battle, a rap beef.
You have criticized Hillary Clinton as the, quote, personification of the rot that has sickened the Democratic Party. What is the rot you see in the Democratic Party?
That our Democratic Party, unfortunately, is not the party that is of, by, and for the people. It is a party that has been and continues to be influenced by the foreign policy establishment in Washington, represented by Hillary Clinton and others' foreign policy, by the military-industrial complex and other greedy corporate interests. I'm running for president to be the Democratic nominee that rebuilds our Democratic Party, takes it out of their hands, and truly puts it in the hands of the people of this country, a party that actually hears the voices of Americans who are struggling all across this country, and puts it in the hands of veterans and fellow Americans who are calling for an end to this ongoing Bush, Clinton, Trump foreign policy doctrine of regime change wars, overthrowing dictators in other countries, needlessly sending my brothers and sisters in uniform into harm's way to fight in wars that actually undermine our national security and have cost us thousands of American lives. These are wars that have cost us as American taxpayers trillions of dollars since 9/11 alone, dollars that have come out of our pockets, out of our hospitals, out of our schools, out of our infrastructure needs. As president, I will end this foreign policy, end these regime change wars, work to end this new Cold War and arms race, and instead invest our hard-earned taxpayer dollars actually into serving the needs of the American people right here at home.
Senator Harris, any response?
Oh, sure. I think that it's unfortunate that we have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama, who has spent full-time criticizing people on this stage as affiliated with the Democratic Party. When Donald Trump was elected, not even sworn in, buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal, and then spends full time during the course of this campaign, again, criticizing the Democratic Party. What we need on the stage in November is someone who has the ability to win. And by that, we need someone on that stage who has the ability to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, and someone who has the ability to rebuild the Obama coalition and bring the party and the nation together. I believe I am that candidate.
Thank you, Senator. Congresswoman Gabbard, I'll give you a chance to respond.
What Senator Harris Congress is doing is unfortunately continuing to traffic in lies and smears and innuendos because she cannot challenge the substance of the argument that I'm making, the leadership and the change that I'm seeking to bring in our foreign policy, which only makes me guess that she will, as president, continue the status quo, continue the Bush, Clinton, Trump foreign policy of regime change wars, which is deeply destructive. This is personal to me because I served in Iraq. I left my seat in the state legislature in Hawaii, volunteered to deploy to Iraq, where I served in a medical unit where every single day I saw the terribly high human cost of war. I take very seriously the responsibility that the president has to serve as commander-in-chief, to lead our armed forces, and to make sure always, no, I'm not going to put party interests first. I will put the interests of the American people above all else.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I want to briefly give...
Yo. She's same shit that she said yesterday. She truly is America first.
Senator Harris, a final second to respond.
I believe that what our nation needs right now is a nominee who can speak to all people. I spent my entire career standing mostly in a courtroom speaking 5 words, Kamala Harris for the people. And it was about all the people, regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, regardless of where they live geographically, regardless of the party with which they're registered to vote or the language their grandmother speaks. We need someone on this debate stage in November who has the ability to unify the country and to win the election. And I believe, again, I am that candidate.
Thank you for watching this video from NBC4 New York. You can subscribe.
Today, the Taliban claimed responsibility for killing 2 American service members in Afghanistan. Leaders as disparate as President Obama and President Trump have both said that they want to end U.S. involvement in Afghanistan, but it isn't over for America. Why isn't it over? Why can't presidents of very different parties and very different temperaments get us out of there? And how could you?
I appreciate that question. So I've been in Congress 17 years. And 12 of those years, I've sat on the Armed Services Committee, either the Defense Appropriations Committee or the Armed Services Committee. And the lesson that I've learned over the years is that you have to stay engaged in these situations. Nobody likes it. It's long. It's tedious. But right now we have, so I would say we must be engaged in this. We must have our State Department engaged. We must have our military engaged to the extent they need to be. But the reality of it is this president doesn't even have people appointed in the State Department to deal with these things, whether we're talking about Central America, whether we're talking about Iran, whether we're talking about Afghanistan. We've got to be completely engaged. And here's why. Because these flare-ups distract us from the real problems in the country. If getting drones shot down for $130 million because the president is distracted, that's $130 million that we could be spending in places like Youngstown, Ohio, or Flint, Michigan, or rebuilding.
Congresswoman Gabbard, I'm going to give you 30 seconds, actually, to jump off what he said. He described engagement as the problem.
Is that what you will tell the parents of those 2 soldiers who were just killed in Afghanistan? Well, we just have to be engaged. As a soldier, I will tell you that answer is unacceptable. We have to bring our troops home from Afghanistan.
This is when I fell in love with Tulsi Gabbard. I will admit, I voted for one Democrat my entire life. And that was for that primary.
We are in a place in Afghanistan where we have lost so many lives. We've spent so much money, money that's coming out of every one of our pockets, money that should be going into communities here at home, meeting the needs of the people here at home. We are no better off in Afghanistan today than we were when this war began. This is why it's so important to have a president and commander-in-chief who knows the cost of war and who's ready to do the job on day one. I am ready to do that job when I walk into the Oval Office. Thank you very much.
Listen, I'm going to go down the line. I'm going to go down the line here. Well, you know what? You felt like she was responding. You get 30 seconds. Go.
Good man.
Fair enough.
I appreciate that.
I hear what you're saying.
I would just say I don't want to be engaged. I wish we were spending all this money in places that I've represented that have been completely forgotten and we were rebuilding. But the reality of it is, if the United States isn't engaged, the Taliban will grow and they will have bigger, bolder terrorist acts.
You know,
we
the
have got to
Taliban
have
isn't
some
on
present
target
there.
anymore.
As
The
Congresswoman
Taliban was there
Think
long
about it.
before we came in. They'll be
and they
there
were,
long before we
exactly.
leave.
Well,
We
they
cannot
were.
keep U.S.
And they
troops
were
deployed
flying.
to Afghanistan thinking that we're going to somehow squash this Taliban that has been there, that every other country that's tried
I didn't say
has failed.
squash them. When we weren't in there, they started flying planes into our buildings. So I'm just saying right now, we.
Oh yeah, she's seething. Taliban didn't fly anything into our buildings. Saudis did. Israelis did. The American government did. And nobody held them accountable. But we want to go to Afghanistan. And for what? 20 years of fighting? 20 years of wasting money? 20 years of death? Both American and civilians? Well, fuck out of here.
Taliban didn't attack us on 9/11.
Well,
Al-Qaeda did. Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11.
I understand.
That's why I and so many other people joined the military to go after Al-Qaeda, not the Taliban.
The
Go ahead, Congressman,
Taliban
finish up 10
was
seconds.
protecting those people who were plotting against us. All I'm saying is, if we want to go into elections and we want to say that we got to withdraw from the world, that's what President Trump is saying. We can't. I would love for us to.
You know who's protecting Al-Qaeda right now in Saudi Arabia.
Oh! Wait, did y'all catch the end of that? Did she say Saudi Arabia? All right, guys, one more, and then I'm done. I promise.
I have a lot of respect for the vice president. He has sworn me into my office as a hero. This week, I hear him literally say that I don't think we should legalize marijuana. I thought you might have been high when you said it.
Whoa!
Let me tell you, because marijuana.
Whoa!
Marijuana in our country is already legal for privileged people, and the war on drugs has been a war on black and brown people.
If you notice, I have more people supporting me in the black community that have announced for me because they know me. They know who I am. 3 former chairs of the Black Caucus, the only African-American woman that ever been elected to the United States Senate, a whole range of people.
No,
my point is,
that's not true. The other one is here.
I said the first. I said the first African-American elected. The first African-American. So my point is...
But I want to get back to Pete Buttigieg and his comment about experience. Pete, you'll agree that the service that we both have provided to our country as veterans by itself does not qualify us to serve as commander-in-chief. I think the most recent example of your inexperience in national security and foreign policy came from your recent careless statement about how you as president would be willing to send our troops to Mexico to fight the cartels.
Oh, shit.
As commander-in-chief,
Oh, shit.
leader of our armed forces, I bring extensive experience. Came from your inexperience in national security and foreign policy came from your recent careless statement about how you as president would be willing to send our troops to Mexico to fight the cartels.
Holy shit. No fucking way.
As commander-in-chief, leader of our armed forces, I bring extensive experience serving for 7 years in Congress, on the Foreign Affairs Committee, on the Armed Services Committee, on the Homeland Security Committee, meeting with leaders of countries around the world, working with military commanders of different commands, dealing with high-level national security briefings, understanding what's necessary, the preparation that I've gotten to walk in on day one to serve as commander-in-chief.
Congresswoman, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'll allow you to respond.
I know that it's par for the course in Washington to take remarks out of context, but that is outlandish even by the standards of today's politics.
Are you saying that you didn't say that?
I was talking about U.S.-Mexico cooperation. We've been doing security cooperation with Mexico for years, with law enforcement cooperation, and a military relationship that could continue to be developed with training relationships, for example. Do you seriously think anybody on this stage is proposing invading Mexico?
That's not
I'm
what I
talking
said.
about
That's not
building
what I
up.
said.
I'm talking about building up alliances. And if your question is about experience, let's also talk about judgment. One of the foreign leaders you mentioned meeting was Bashar al-Assad. I have, in my experience, such as it is, whether you think it counts or not, since it wasn't accumulated in Washington, enough judgment that I would not have sat down with a murderous dictator like that.
Congresswoman Gabbard, let me allow you to respond.
Thank you. You were asked directly whether you would send our troops to Mexico to fight cartels, and your answer was yes. The fact checkers can check this out.
Oh, nice.
But your point about judgment is absolutely correct. Our commander-in-chief does need to have good judgment. And what you've just pointed out is that you would lack the courage.
And remember, Pete Buttigieg is the one that took paternity leave when they adopted a child during, what the fuck, that train wreck in East Palestine. 40 days. And then when the bridge collapsed, where was he? Where was he?
With both adversaries and friends to ensure the peace and national security of our nation. I take the example of those leaders who have come before us, leaders like JFK, who met with Khrushchev, like Roosevelt, who met with Stalin, like Reagan, who met and worked with Gorbachev. These issues of national security are incredibly important. I will meet with and do what is necessary to make sure that no more of our brothers and sisters in uniform are needlessly sent into harm's way fighting regime change wars that undermine our national security. I'll bring real leaders.
Hold on. I just got a freedom boner, guys. Whatever this dude's response is, it better be, I agree. Or he is the faggot he is.
Leadership and experience to the White House.
I don't agree with the wealth tax the way that Elizabeth Warren puts it. But I agree that we need to raise the estate tax. We need to tax capital gains as ordinary income, real strategies will increase revenue. But here's the challenge. We as Democrats need to fight for a just taxation system. But as I travel around the country, we Democrats also have to talk about how to grow.
There's no just tax system because taxes are illegal. They're theft. Oh, yes, but it's the price to live in a civilized society. What have our taxes done? They haven't built up our society. Where do our tax dollars go? Not the United States, where it should be going to. Oops.
Wealth as well.
So let me just tell you what we can do with that 2-cent wealth tax. 2 cents on the top 1/10 of 1% in this country, and we can provide universal child care for every baby in this country ages 0 to 5. That is transformative. We can provide universal pre-K for every 3-year-old.
Now, here's the thing with that universal child care. I get it. Child care is expensive. But if more and more children go into child care, and you know what some of these daycares are already done throughout the history of the country and the world, it would just make it a whole lot easier. Or am I wrong?
And 4-year-old in America. We can stop exploiting the women, largely black and brown women, who do this work, and we can raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in America. We can put $800 billion new federal dollars into all of our public schools. We can make college tuition free for every kid. We can put $50 billion into historically black colleges and universities, and we can cancel student loan debt for 95% of the folks who've got it. 2-cent wealth tax, and we can invest in an entire generation.
It's unfortunate that we have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama.
That's
who
ridiculous,
has spent full-time.
That's
who
ridiculous.
has spent full-time
This is not the clip I
criticizing
was
people
looking
on
for.
this stage as affiliated with the Democratic Party when Donald Trump was elected, not even sworn in, buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal, and then spends full time during the course of this campaign, again, criticizing the Democratic Party.
Congresswoman Gabbard, I'll give you a chance to respond.
What Senator Harris is doing is unfortunately continuing to traffic in lies and smears and innuendos because she cannot challenge the substance of the argument that I'm making, the leadership and the change that I'm seeking to bring in our foreign policy, which only makes me guess that she will, as president, continue the status quo, continue the Bush-Clinton-Trump foreign policy of regime change wars, which is deeply destructive. This is personal to me because I served in Iraq. I left my seat in the state legislature in Hawaii, volunteered to deploy to Iraq, where I served in a medical unit where every single day I saw the terribly high human cost of war. I take very seriously the responsibility that the president has to serve as commander-in-chief, to lead our armed forces, and to make... Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
I have a lot of respect for...
Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? So that was Tulsi's hearing. I honestly need to go check on when the votes are going to happen, or if they're going to have to come back for a second round, which I probably believe they're going to ask for it, just like they did with RFK, which I need to go review. But tomorrow we're going to go over Kash Patel. I've caught bits and pieces of the Kash hearing, so I'm not going to watch any more of it, so we can watch a lot of it together. Tomorrow, like I said, tomorrow it's going to be a long show. Well, not like yesterday's wasn't. And we're going to do the Kash Patel. And I'm going to do the same thing with the Kash Patel that I did to the Tulsi one. I'm going to get rid of all the long-winded introductions. Because those introductions, like literally, maybe not because I was high, but still, I was sitting there, I'm like, you know what? Fuck these introductions. And I forwarded to the first line of questioning, and it's already 45 minutes to an hour in. It's fucking crazy for introductions. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this was, what do you think about Tulsi? I'm kind of biased because I've been following Tulsi since those debates, and she was absolutely smashing those motherfuckers. But because she was not minority enough, or not Joe Biden, because, it is what it is. But that's the past. And now let's see what she's going to plan for the future. And I have full faith and confidence that she'll do what's best for the nation. Because that seems to be the common theme. We're doing what's best for our country constitutionally. What is wrong with that? We want our health systems to get better. We want our kids to get healthier. But what's wrong with that? These two people that these congressmen are, questioning over for their positions, remember who bought and paid them. Check who donated to their campaigns. Check their net worths. Be surprised. But I'm not telling you how to think, because that's just fucking nuts. And that would make me a Democrat. I'm just telling you to think. Because the more and more you open your eyes up, and like with this whole fucking debate flashback, Bro. Even Petey wanted to send fucking troops into Mexico. Damn. And then he got called out on it because I didn't never say that, blah, 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 blah. And I hope y'all have a good rest of the day. And did I tell you? Yes, I did. With that being said, anybody got any last comments, questions, concerns? Oh. Nope. Well,